Right. Romans 3:20. Check it
Game
out.
over. Game over. Lights out. You've just been completely obliterated publicly with
Cool.
your. Wait, you've been caught. You've been folded like a chair, caught with your pants down.
Cool. Of nature.
That Toffee's argument. The whole point with Toffee's argument is just to show that, like, the Trinitarians don't know what they're talking about if they're just trying to ascribe, like, either some absolute identity between all the members or like a relative identity between the members, right? But you could be, let's say, a modalist or like some monarchian, right? And that argument wouldn't apply to you for that view. It's just that those views are just considered heretical. Like I even think partialism is coherent and doesn't fall victim to Toffee's argument. But I mean, imagining going into a debate, Toffee posting the arguments out of the kindness of his heart for Smokey to see, and Smokey just hand waves the argument by just saying, "Oh, logic doesn't apply to God." Okay, then what is logic? And what is God then? Like gibberish, right? Like, how can you have a justified belief that God exists if you don't employ the classical laws of logic?
Can you send me that argument?
Hold on, it's on Pastebin. I'll link it.
Yeah,
Gotcha.
John, I have a
But
question for you, John.
Sean or John?
John.
Oh, of course. I didn't even. Oh, he just hopped in.
The answer is God transcends the laws of logic.
Oh, so
Well,
he's like, oh, so that then you're just spouting gibberish at that point, right?
But God
Yeah,
establishes
but
the
listen,
laws of
man.
logic. It's just that, the laws of nature, the laws of logic. However, God transcends them. He establishes them for who? The creatures.
Okay,
Not
so
the
the
Wouldn't
creatures.
wouldn't
Hegelian
wouldn't
absolute
establishing hold
exists.
on, Altoid. Wouldn't establishing the laws of logic already assume that the laws of logic are true? Don't you need to employ the laws of
Yes, they
logic
are.
in
They
order
are
to?
true, but not.
Okay, wouldn't you? Okay, in order for God to establish the laws of logic, whatever that means, it presupposes that he's employing logic to do that very thing, the establishing of logic, right? Because he can't both establish and not establish logic at the same time, right?
I agree.
Okay, so that's the law of excluded middle.
Right, I agree.
Okay, so then that's already presupposing that logic exists.
Logic does exist in the natural
Okay,
universe.
so how can he transcend logic if he needs to employ logic in order to establish it? That doesn't make any
You're
sense.
talking about the nature of God. That's
If
a
you
different
transcend
proposition.
something, you're outside of it. So you're not going to be establishing anything if you're outside of logic. Now, would you?
Well, I mean, he grounds it, sure, for the natural
Okay.
universe. It's
Okay.
it's just like
Okay.
he
And is
establishes the laws of
is that
nature,
is that
right?
is that grounding? Is that grounding relation going to involve logic? Because either it's the case he grounds logic, or it's not the case that he grounds logic.
Yes, it
Correct?
is the case that he grounds the laws of logic, the laws of nature, but he transcends every time he performs a miracle.
Okay.
He
That's just
violates the
repeating.
laws of nature.
Look, whether you claim that he grounds logic, whether he grounds logic as opposed to not grounding logic, that's a true dichotomy, right? That's the law of exclusion.
yeah.
That's one of the laws of classical
Yes, he
logic.
does.
You're already
As I already said, he
you're
grounds
already
logic in nature. Yeah.
shut up. You're already employing logic in order to say that this very being transcends it. It doesn't make any fucking sense.
In order to understand the nature of God, God transcends the
Well,
nature of
that's
God
fine.
transcends the laws
That's
so
of logic.
fine. If
John,
you want
so John, if
that
this makes sense,
if you want to say that your belief in God isn't logical, right? That your belief in God cannot be logically understood, then that's fine, right? But that's an epistemic claim. What you were making earlier was an ontological claim about the status of God and how it relates to logic. Those are two
Yeah,
separate
Yeah.
the
things.
belief in God is surely reasonable.
Your belief is going to be different to how God actually is. And just saying that he transcends logic would just mean that you're just spouting gibberish at that
So what?
point.
So what you want to say,
It's
John, is that you don't have enough data to completely flush out God's nature, and then you want to say, if you believe it's beyond classic logic, just say it's not classical logic, but it may fall into fuzzy logic. There's lots of different philosophical fields that you can go to, but you can't say that God is apart from logic or God is illogical, because that comes off as being irrational. You have to
Yeah,
at
well,
least
I
make
never
one of
said
those
that.
moves.
Yeah, I don't know what
Even
data
when people try to
does in
spoon
this
feed him, he
instance.
doesn't get it.
Yeah, like
I
for
don't know what
example,
data
James.
is in this
For
instance,
example,
right? But
we have the
when you
laws of
say
Well,
like
nature.
transcend logic, do you mean that God is outside of logic or that God is
well, I'm
abiding
not
by the
saying
rules of logic?
transcend, but when I say data altoid, I mean that, like, we
No, no,
have
I'm
God who's
asking
revealing.
John. So
Oh,
John,
okay.
So when you say God transcends logic, right? Are you saying that he does or does not abide by the laws of logic? Like excluded middle, law of identity, and so forth, right?
Yeah, not within his nature. For example, does God abide by the laws of nature, the laws of thermodynamics? Absolutely not.
No, I'm asking logic.
Is there a difference between the laws of nature and the laws of logic?
Yes,
Yeah.
dumbass.
I
Holy
disagree.
shit. What's the
Why?
difference?
The difference is that
Look,
God is.
look, look, the axioms of logic.
It's like a materialist
The
saying that does
axioms
not
of
compute that
logic,
God can create matter.
the axioms of logic just have to do with rules of inference, right? How can that be equated to physical constants in the universe? Right? This is just like insane what you're saying.
It's like saying, well, it's insane that God can violate the laws of thermodynamics, and it's like, well, how can that
I
be?
never said that. I said that you can't equate rules of inference, right? Rules of thought with rules of thought which are abstract, by the way, with like how physical constants are and how concrete objects interact with each other in the physical universe. Like that those aren't the same thing. Obviously there's a difference.
Within the natural universe, certainly the laws of logic apply.
John. Why do you do this to yourself?
I'm
You keep getting dunked on and dunked on and dunked on.
consenting. He's consenting to this. That's the funniest part.
I mean,
Like
you actually make it a
Jay
little
Robin would at least
smoky.
like go hide in his
Uh,
cave in a
I
Baghdad, right?
respect
Like
him for
Bin
that.
Laden.
you make it
But
sound
this
like
guy,
Smokey
not
made an
Bin Laden.
absurd statement. It
This
was
guy's
actually
this
very
hey,
reasonable.
this guy's the type of criminal who just like, okay, I'm here, right? I've got the money, I've got the bank money in front of me. Come get me.
Yeah, Smokey made a
Well, the
brilliant
point is
statement.
just
You
that
guys can't accept it. Well, that's
the
fine.
point is just that John Lee was asked a question and he didn't answer, right? So the question is just when you say God transcends logic, are you saying that God does not abide by the laws of logic?
No, God is not subject to logic.
Which
He's not
means that he
underneath
does not
logic.
abide by it. Holy shit.
Okay.
No,
So
why should God
hold
abide by
on. So
logic?
hold on. Is God God?
God is certainly God.
Okay. Uh, can God be God and not God at the same time?
No, he cannot.
Okay. And it's a true dichotomy between being God and being not God, right?
That is correct.
So then there we fucking go, right?
I'm
He
clipping this.
just
I'm fucking
abides
clipping
by
this.
Oh
the
God!
laws of logic.
It's like
He's
he just gets
understood
dunked
with the
on and
laws of
dunked
logic,
on.
but
Wait,
his nature is
Show
also
me
how
your
else
fallacy.
how else do we talk
the
about
nature of
God
God
other
is a whole
than
proposition.
how we understand him to be?
And it also
Once again,
doesn't
the
make
nature of God is a
it
different
doesn't
proposition.
also make a lot of sense to say if we're being honest here, it doesn't really make much sense to say that he abides by the laws of logic, in the sense that the laws that, when you say abide by, it kind of implies that the laws of logic have like this causal power, which everything is like, you know, bound by, has to be in accord with, and the same thing, in the same way that we're in accord with gravity, and that's not the case, right? It's the, what they should be really referred to are axioms of logic, right? So they're just going to be rules that we employ in order to make inferences, right? So sure, in that sense, it doesn't make a lot of sense to predicate and say that a concrete object abides by, you know, an abstract object like logic, right? But John isn't making any sense, because if he says that God transcends the laws of logic, or rather the axioms of logic, all that really amounts to is just him stating that God cannot be inferred, right? God, God is the type of being or whatever, in his view, which you can't make any inferences about, right?
Yeah.
And so that's why I was saying it just seems like you're just saying gibberish at that point. So
Well,
then
he's beyond your understanding.
how would you make a knowledge claim about God if you're not employing logic? How can you say that God exists as opposed to not existing if you're not already employing
Well,
logic, like
well,
Altoid
you
said?
could still
You're undermining
understand
theism.
existence.
You're undermining your theism when you say that God
Well,
transcends the
no,
laws of
look,
logic.
so just everything that exists abides by, or let's just say follows a set of rules, right? In which we can, given certain existences and
No, no, it would
given
be
certain
everything
conditions,
that's
given
created.
certain
There's a
existences and
difference.
given certain conditions, we can follow rules of inference to come to true conclusions,
Altoid, everything
right?
that is created
But
would be the proper
on a
statement,
second
not
note,
Shut
right?
up, John.
On a second note, right? So the what I find like really annoying is this talk about, well, I mean, we can only talk about God analogously, and there's this way in which we only understand it through the human intellect, and I find that to be like a major cop out, right? Like the only way that because I don't think he exists, but really the only way you understand him is the totality of predicates you predicate upon the object, right? You can't understand what something is outside of your understanding of it, obviously, right? So, I mean, just your understanding of it is like the totality of properties and descriptions and descriptors we would like apply to the object. So, I just
Yeah,
don't
how
take
could
it
you
to be like
predicate?
some
How,
genuine
wait,
like
wait, 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 wait.
critique to say that you understand outside of your understanding of an object, right? That's gibberish.
Wait, but
And we're talking about
that was a bit.
all
That
that is
was a bit
created,
long.
not all that exists. And
What you
that's the
said,
difference,
what
Altoid,
you
in
said
your
was a
reasoning.
bit long. I'm just gonna put this more succinctly, right? If he just says that God is incomprehensible, right, which is the view that he's gonna want to take if he thinks that God transcends the laws of logic, then he's predicating an attribute of God, and I guess that's redundant. But how could you predicate that anything is the case if you're not employing logic already, right? So it's just you're never going to get out of this problem. Like, how can you make a claim about what God's nature is, but then simultaneously claim that you don't know what God's nature is? It doesn't make any sense.
Yeah,
Like,
but
how do you
if we're
predicate
gonna
without logic, right?
like look, so if we're
The
gonna
nature of
say
God is
that,
beyond our understanding. Very simple.
yeah,
Not
look, so if
response. Just
this is, I think, a very big problem,
begging the
right?
point of view.
So if he says that God is incomprehensible, um,
Does he comprehend?
right, and that's a property, and we don't take it to be like on the face of it incoherent, right? That God is incomprehensible, right? So let's just say, okay, for any existing object, it would be at least conceivable that
For any
we could
created
follow
object would
some,
be proper.
for any existing
For any
object. We
created
could
object.
conceive that it's yes,
Shut
sorry, stop
up.
talking. Right. So for any existing object, it's conceivable that we could have, you know, comprehends, at least in some ways, some comprehension of um, that object, right? Whether that be through rules of inference or inference from empiric observation or what have you, right? Whether that be a priori or a posterior. But he's just saying that, I mean, God doesn't exist, right? Because what he's saying is that he's like analytically just one of his properties is that he's incomprehensible. So, so it's just we would never talk about God, and in that way, he just doesn't exist.
Yeah,
I
great
mean,
fantasy.
I told him earlier that his view entails that God doesn't exist, but he just keeps making this distinction between the creator and the creation, which doesn't make any
That's
sense.
it. Creator. There's a reason why we talk analogically about
Yeah,
God.
but you
There's no
realize
other
that the
way.
people who hold to that distinction, like let's say EF thinks that God is comprehensible to some degree, right? So he won't make this, I mean, as much of an idiot that he is, he won't make this outlandish claim that God is incomprehensible in the sense that, I mean, you could never make sense of what he is, right? Which is,
Yeah.
like Altoid said, indistinguishable from something that doesn't exist, right? So the point is,
Sounds like
you want to
Dillahunty.
you want to say that God transcends logic. Okay, I mean, non-existing things, right, don't abide by the laws of logic. Are you just making an admission that God doesn't exist?
Once you get all that exists into all that is created, then you have the proper paradigm.
Yeah,
What?
this guy's not gonna understand.
What are you
Once
talking
you
about,
get
bro?
all that exists into all that exists,
You can't
then you have.
So if you have a
you can't predicate
materialistic view, in a sense, that
predicate
John.
existence,
anything.
right, is
You can't predicate any you can't predicate anything onto God without presupposing that you're applying logic in order to infer about the nature of this thing, okay?
Okay, premise
So
one,
you're
you
inferring
can't
that God
believe,
is
care, or
incomprehensible.
worship in anything that is incomprehensible, because by definition it's incomprehensible. Premise two, God is incomprehensible. Conclusion, nobody can believe in God. Right, there you go.
yeah. You guys are the one that's saying, listen, the nature God, the God reveals, right? He reveals knowledge, right? This is what we have.
It means
However, when you're
reveal,
trying to understand the
but
mind of God, the
revealed
nature of God,
by
all
your
these things is
beliefs.
beyond your ability.
Look, look,
What good
even
is
if
it
we
then?
grant that he transcends our ability to understand him, why would you think that you would be justified in believing that he exists, right? If it's just if the concept of God is just gibberish, why would you make a knowledge claim that he exists in the first place if it's incomprehensible to you? It's like me making a knowledge claim about, like, um whether or not Yiddish, right, is a legitimate and official language, right? Well, I mean, I don't understand it, right? So why would I make a knowledge claim about it?
There's a difference between knowing that Yiddish exists and understanding the language of Yiddish. So there's two separate propositions. God
No, that's
is
not the
not
point. The
is
point
not
is you're not
incomprehensible to
justified
understand
in
the existence of
believing in
God.
something which is gibberish, right?
I can know
You're not
I can
justified
know
in believing something
that
that
Yiddish
you don't
exists
understand.
without knowing the language. Isn't that possible?
You're not justified in believing in something which is gibberish.
Once again, I can know that Yiddish exists as a language without knowing the language.
No, that's not the point.
That is the point.
You can't. No, it's not that
Something
It's
is
Yiddish
scary you think
exists.
that's analogous. It's scary. That's
inconceivable.
fucking
Let's just
scary.
say something which is inconceivable in the sense that, I mean, take something like the square circle, right? I mean, just on its face, that's just going to be something which cannot exist, right? And you're saying that if I can just believe that square circles exist, even though I find the concept completely unintelligible and inconceivable, right? I'm not justified in my belief that square circles exist.
Well, actually, you're justified in
I'm
believing it's
not.
a false proposition because it's a created object.
No, that's not why.
That's
That's
exactly
not
why.
why, dumb fuck. That has nothing to do with
Your
the
objection is
reason.
meaningless.
What are you talking
What
about,
the
John?
fuck?
Like I feel sorry. I feel sorry that we have to like pull just get just like be naked at this point, right? Because we're constantly pulling your pants down in these stages. Like every fucking day you consent to just being
Yeah,
full
it's more
naked,
like an echo chamber that's
That's
having
why
your
they
game
call him
irrational.
Bukaki Lee.
down, having the game over and then turning the lights off, right? It's like you want this. You want this.
It's like playing pigeon
You
chess with a
want this
bunch of
treatment.
people.
And you're coping. That's the funniest part. You cope in every single one of these
No,
stages, and
I've
you
made
don't
certain
bring
points. You
you
guys
don't
haven't
bring
addressed it. Altoid talks about all that
right. The
exists. I'm
the only
talking about all
person,
that's created. He hasn't found a rebuttal for that.
well,
John, even
because that's not
John, just
his claim. That's not his claim. He's saying that it applies to every existing object, not just created objects, right?
Why does it have to be all existent objects rather than all created objects?
you had already admitted this.
Well, then show without appealing to normative virtue, which you like to do a lot. Then show
He's the
in
one
virtue of
specially pleading.
what? Can you stop talking? Holy shit! This guy can't even shut up for like 2 seconds. Look, in virtue of what is a created object gonna be different in the sense that it abides by the laws of logic, whatever that means, and contrasting with a creator, right, which doesn't abide by the laws of logic. In what sense can a creator exist and not abide by the laws of logic? That's what we're asking you, because you hold
For
this
example,
view.
the creator of the Yiddish language is not bound to the Yiddish language.
That's not what I asked. I asked you in virtue, how can it exist if it transcends the laws of logic? I think it's a very simple question. How can it exist? See, I mean, this guy won't answer the question.
Yeah, what is a logical
No, I
contradiction in
didn't ask. I didn't
existence?
ask you. You don't have to ask me anything
He
about
doesn't
logical
know.
contradiction. I'm saying, how can it exist if it transcends logic? Simple question.
The same way miracles can exist without conforming to the laws of nature.
That-
But wait,
Which they can't.
you're not saying that. Well, hold on. I mean, in your worldview, you're not saying that like some law of logic is being violated there, right?
I'm saying that all that is created necessarily must conform to the laws of nature and the laws of logic, right? However, the creator, right, is not bound by the laws of nature nor the laws of logic, and therefore he can, if you want to use the word
yeah, but that's
violate,
just the claim.
he
We're asking
transcends them.
the
Yeah.
argument. Just saying
And
that
where's
he
the logical problem in that?
Well,
just saying that he can't.
the
Just saying that
logical
he
problem is
can't
saying that he
claim.
doesn't
What's the
have
fucking
to
argument?
follow logic. What
No,
I mean,
Altoid, just
that's
ask
just
him
as
for the argument.
straightforwardly
This is where he
as
runs.
incoherent as possible. Well, no, I don't think I have to, right? He's just saying, well, what's the
Where's the
logical
logical
problem with
necessity
No,
that?
that
no,
the
just
Where
creator
forget
of the
about
laws
that.
of logic
Just
must
forget about that
conform to
claim,
them?
because you see, in a debate, he's not the only one who does this, right? If you ask him for the contradiction, he won't give you one. So you don't, you don't seem as forceful if you ask a question, um, than just like demanding for an argument, like Ask Yourself does, which is like an effective style, because he won't provide
But I just don't think like we could really appeal to
game
anything at
over
this
at that.
point, right? Because John just said, well, what's the logical problem with the creator who doesn't have to follow logic? And I mean, if that's just not as straightforwardly an issue as it is to anybody else viewing it, I don't see the point
Is he
in even
saying
Yeah,
engaging.
I
that it's
think you could
logically
easily.
possible? Is he saying that it's logically possible for God to exist but transcend the laws of
I mean,
logic? And if so, if he says yes, that means that God is still bound by logic, right? Because
no, that's not what
the
that
very
means.
concrete object that we're predicating upon here, which is God, you're trying to describe him by saying that it's logically possible for him to exist in virtue of him transcending the laws of logic, right? So you are using logical modality to describe what God is. So how can he be outside of the laws of logic then? Explain that, Elfhead.
Yeah,
Explain.
very simply, we can deduce that
Did you say? What did you
logically
say?
that
Deduce.
the Yiddish language
Elfhead.
exists, right?
No,
However, that
the
does not
point
get
is,
you to
right,
the
we can't
understanding of the
deduce,
Yiddish
right? Because
language.
when you throw out
Yeah,
logic,
why don't you just
I mean,
interrupt me every
there's
time I
no
speak?
point in
Yeah,
using logic.
have an
You
echo
can't.
So
chamber.
so
Go
it's
for it,
just
Alfred.
incoherent. It's complete gibberish. There's no point, right? If you're gonna throw out logic and just say we don't need this with regards to a specific existing object, right? Then I mean, the point of deduction is just none at all, because you can pick
We're
and
just
choose
You're trying to
when
say
Athanasius,
that
man.
you can pick and choose when these rules give you true premises, or the laws of inference and logic like apply and don't apply, and that's just straightforwardly
you're
not how it
trying to say
works.
that
What makes them the laws of logic is that they apply for
all that's
every
created.
rule of inference that we could th- that it, no, for everything that
No,
exists,
that's your
right?
arbitrary
That we
expectation.
could have like,
That's your arbitrary expectation. Very simply, the creator
well, no,
who
Arbitrary.
no, you're
establishes the
conceding
laws,
you're
the
conceding
axioms
that
of
God
logic.
isn't
Listen,
logical.
You can
John
continue to
Lee.
overtalk me if you want,
John
Alfred.
Lee.
So
John
so
Lee.
if you just concede that God isn't logical, I mean, like, there's nothing that holds the bar between just believing in any nonsense, right?
John,
For no reason at
John, do you
No,
all.
know that
If
you're
you
a
can
brain in
pick
the
and
vat?
understanding
choose,
the
if you
existence
can
of
pick and
God and the
choose
nature
when
of God
you
are two
want to
separate
follow
propositions.
the laws of logic, right? And when we could have
Yeah,
rules of inference to get
just keep talking to
valid
yourself,
valid
Alfred.
arguments and valid deductions, then I mean, it's just,
Yeah, just
there's
keep talking
look,
to yourself. Convince yourself.
there's no
I,
point, right?
I wish
You're just saying that there's
No,
to
no,
no, you're
like,
not even
you
listening to
can't
what I'm saying.
rationally believe it.
fucker over
That's
again.
just what you're saying. You're
No,
just saying you can't
you're
rationally believe
misrepresenting what
it.
I'm saying. Very simply because you
No,
refuse to
you're
listen.
saying that God doesn't abide by like the laws of
John,
logic,
That is
and
correct.
that
you're
we
the only.
can deduce that.
John,
What?
you're
It
the
does
only
not
man on the
necessitate
planet.
that the creator of the
John,
axioms of logic.
you're the only man on the planet that knows he's a brain in a vat. That's the problem.
Look at this guy's
That was
profile
good.
picture. I fucking love Daniel. Jesus. This is just great. Like, John is the type of person who, I mean, could just defeat Putnam's arguments against skepticism at that moment.
I thought
He's
Smokey's
the,
answers were brilliant. I'm glad he didn't waste time with you
like
guys.
like
Yeah,
And then you
Smokey's a
guys
you
were
would, John.
moron.
bouncing off
You
each
would, John.
other.
Fuck it out.
You guys
He
had an echo
breaks
chamber
John,
for what, like
Foxbury.
five
Wait.
hours?
So if you
can
think,
Were
hold
you guys were
hold on.
consoling
If you think
yourselves?
that Smokey is so smart, then explain what the non 3D laws of logic are.
I thought he did well personally.
Oh,
okay,
so you don't know what he was saying, right?
No, I do know what he was saying. He was talking about
Oh,
like
so
quantum
okay,
mechanics
then
does
what
not
are
have
the
to abide
non
by
3D
mechanics.
laws of logic?
did this guy just say this dumb shit that people on the internet say all the time, that quantum
No,
mechanics doesn't
I've
abide
never heard that
by
before, said Darth. but it thought it made
It's been
sense.
said like a gazillion
I've never
times.
heard it a gazillion times. I've
Gazillion
never even
times
heard it
on these
once.
platforms. I just want to get an AK, right?
But he doesn't even know. He doesn't even know what his logic
Quantum
is.
mechanics. So what part of quantum mechanics doesn't quote unquote abide by logic?
Well, there was a time when people thought that it violated logic, but
Yeah, they're just saying,
further investigation, it
like
was not the case.
what
It
part
was
of it,
apparent contradiction.
like the whole things popping in and out of existence, that's just a misrepresentation of uh of observer theory, right? Like it's not that the actual like protons and electrons pop in and out of existence. It's just that the observer is perceiving it to be that way, right? Which is called the observer effect. It's not actually that two things are just both popping in and
No,
out.
that's not what I'm talking about. But in any case, go
But
ahead.
You're not
people
talking about
cite
anything.
that example, but it's like the most ridiculous thing. I mean, before you came along, those people were like the biggest
Right?
gibberish generator, right? And quantum mechanics destroys material. Well, we had a guy that was arguing that
The
last
dumb
month,
fuck
like
Gavin.
John. Well, yeah, that
Oh, materialism is
some
shot
other guy,
philosophically.
John Maddox was his name. Another John. Who knew, right? Who knew? Another gibberish generator by the same name.
Was he the guy
Um,
talking about
the
DNA and the
fine
fine-tuning
tuning
argument?
DNA wave
Oh
function
my
collapse.
God. Yeah,
Oh
Jack
yeah.
Jack came in there and he's just
And
like,
he went.
just give
Jack
me
didn't
the
even
fucking
go in
argument.
hot. Jack was very quiet. All he
Yeah,
did was
it
like
was
give
about
me
like 2
a question.
a.m.
Begging
so he couldn't.
like his first premise was identical to the conclusion, right? And he couldn't provide a non-question begging argument when asked for like several times. It's just amazing, right? I guess his cognitive states don't abide by the laws of logic. I mean,
What is this guy's profile picture?
Yeah, what the fuck? Jesus.
Why don't you figure it out?
No, no, the problem is I think we have.
Okay, good. Then I don't need to explain.
Someone needs to add John Lee's face to that. to
gibberish,
that
Just put
list.
gibberish,
John Lee's face in all of the
gibberish
categories.
generator is the description.
I
Oh
mean,
wait,
that's the only kind of
wait.
arguments you guys have.
John, that was good.
The most dishonest person in all hemispheres, right? Just put the
I mean,
most
I've been
dishonest
John
laughing.
Lee
person.
at this point is just like Johnny Sins, right?
That's all
Because
you
he's
guys
just trying
got.
to be so many like
Oh,
professions
you
of,
guys.
Yeah.
intellectual that he's just
All you
not.
guys have is mockery, memes. I mean, this has been going
Oh,
on
you
forever.
Mockery
got.
memes. Look,
Oh, and then you have an echo chamber and you bounce it off each other.
just
You
put
guys
in the
sound clever.
profile picture, folded like a chair, caught with
You
your
guys,
pants
you
down,
guys
game
talked
over,
about
lights
after
off.
Smokey destroyed you in like
Game
about
John,
15.
over!
the nail
I
in your
mean, like
coffin was when you didn't
1 minute.
even know the Bible. John, the
You
nail in your
guys were
coffin was when
bouncing
you
off
proved.
ideas for like 5 hours.
Right, John, the real
Goodness,
nail in your coffin was
you
when
guys were
you
consoling
couldn't answer
yourselves. It was
simple
pathetic.
questions about the Bible. John, you couldn't answer simple questions about the Bible. You could have been a hero. You could have answered all
I
20
pretty
questions
much knew all of
perfectly.
them.
You would have been a hero. John, let me finish, please. You could have been a hero. Look what you went and did that night. You made a fool of Christianity and
You guys
yourself.
were the ones. You should have seen the
Now
back
shut up.
messages. You guys were the ones looking like fools.
Yeah.
I'm glad it
He's
happened,
just.
Daniel.
I've never seen anyone like the only people who have coped this hard, right, are like T Jump and Dionysus. But though even those people are less of a gibberish
Yeah.
generator than this guy. And they haven't been caught with their pants down so many times. Like John at this point should just like walk bare naked right into these stages. I mean,
John,
I
just
mean, I mean, he likes it. He likes this stuff.
John, walk
You
on
got to
He
give it
stage.
loves punishment.
John,
because
walk on stage,
Someone
bend
like Jay
over, and
Robin,
spread your
or
cheeks, and make.
or J. Robin or EF, right? They spend their time, or look, like even with those like Muslim idiots, right? Like they spend most of their time in their fucking room, just like avoiding like conversations in like Nietzsche.
Exactly. They have
Hey,
their own
Darth.
Legion of Doom.
Darth. John says that
So
you guys like
But
failed
you guys have
horribly
your own Legion
obviously,
of
against
you
those
Doom
gotta admit
Muslim
too.
guys.
that they're just
Wait, open
pussies.
your eyes.
John claims that you guys have failed horribly against those Muslim guys.
Oh, I think
I've heard him
Roger
say that a
Khalil
whole
and
bunch of
Hadi kind of, yeah, I think they did pretty good.
times. See,
I could tell you why too.
I'd love to hear it.
Yeah, just very simply, if A is dependent upon B, B dependent upon C, A is necessarily dependent upon C, and then you have Mr. House or Dog or whatever go out there, go on the merry-go-round and talking about, well, yeah, he admits it in one hand, and then he goes, well, on this other hand, we have this Back to the Future scenario where we go back in time,
Look,
and
look,
this
What
is
the
how
there's
he's
fuck are
no
you
talking.
talking
fucking
about?
It's gibberish,
contradiction. Look,
total gibberish.
Yeah, like,
look,
what are you fucking
asshole.
talking about, John? That has nothing to do
There's no
with it.
fucking contradiction. There's no fucking contradiction in saying that the transitivity doesn't apply to a circular set of dependency relations. Okay, I was denying. I was denying that the whole time. You could have a set like that without any transitivity. Like
From my understanding, they said they're not
why
even
would
talking about
anyone
time.
consult you or them over anything that has to do with like set theory or anything like that, right? Like why? Like you don't even know what you're talking about. You said in the back channel that Detroyer didn't know what he was talking about because he was confusing Schaefer's comments because Schaefer was referring to grounding relation instead of dependency relations
That's correct.
when grounding relations are dependency relations. Are you like fucking
And then
stupid?
and then what Detroit tried to do is have the pretense of some kind of controversy because this guy
No,
Schaffer
no,
or whatever objects, and
all
you
three
can't
of
just
us
magically
destroyed them.
fabricate
All three of us
controversy.
destroyed them. And then all they did was just go on their fucking Facebook and then just cope that this Khalil Andani guy who's like a fucking idiot, right? Like he caught Detroyer red-handed on the issue. When you can just like look at the video, you could just like look at the interview that Schaefer had on Friction where he just denies transitivity, right? So you don't know what the fuck you're talking about.
I'm sure John
I'll
just
tell you what it's
disagrees.
like.
Sure,
I'll
he
tell you
just
what
disagrees.
it's actually like watching, like a bunch of mythicists, right? Saying, well, you know what? There's Robert Price. There's, Richard Carrier. There's this controversy on the existence of Jesus, and it's like that. You guys are just totally in some kind of echo chamber, thinking that the Jesus is a myth and it's a valid
You're
argument. And
you're
this is the same thing
crying,
with
man. You're
Schaffer
crying
and
right now.
and
Like,
Detroyer,
are
and
you
now you
guys
guys are
like
on that
looking at this
bandwagon.
guy?
Laughable.
This guy is like crying. It's
He
just
he just
amazing the
disagrees.
level of cope that this guy.
Logic is logical, except when it
It's a
isn't.
fabricated controversy. It's laughable.
I mean, at this point, like I don't know who's got like the worst Dunning Kruger effect, right? Like you, EF, or fucking T jump. Like holy shit.
Even Detroyer acknowledges it's not necessarily a controversy.
There's a video of him saying that's controversial.
He,
Like
after speaking with them,
go
he himself
watch it
rewind
again.
the tape. He acknowledged it's not necessarily a controversy because
Let me
people
guess.
contend
Okay, okay, okay,
their
okay. Let me
objections.
just see if you
Don't
know.
you dare
Let me
lie
just
about
see. Let me
Detroit.
just see. Let me just see. Like what?
It's
Like
9 minutes
what's
and
the
7 seconds
Troyer's?
in.
Like let's just ask this guy. What's the Troyer's position on the existence of God? or non-existence of
Yeah, I
God.
mean, very,
What's
very
his
simply, with
position?
regard to grounding, dependence,
What's
he
his position?
acknowledges there's a
What's his
certain
position on
prevailing
God?
view, and he's on the opposite end of that prevailing view. That he also acknowledges an extreme minority, and so his characterization of controversy,
What's
as I
his
explained with
view?
regard to
What's his
mythos,
view
he
on God?
acknowledged
Is
that.
he an
Sean, why don't you
atheist? Is
look it
he
up?
a agnostic, or is he a theist? What's his view?
What's whose view?
Detroyer, you
Who
idiot.
cares? I know his
I
view on
asked, just
dependency and
answer the
grounding
fucking question.
and transitivity. That's all I know about the guy.
Answer the fucking question.
That's all I know about the guy.
Answer it. Just give me just give me a guess.
And then he interviews
Give me
like
a
some guys like
guess. Give
Lance
me a
this and
guess.
well, my view.
Give me a
Oh, well, I
guess.
can guess he's probably an atheist.
No, he's an agnostic, retard.
Well,
Like,
there
go
you
back
go
to
then.
school.
I don't know.
Like, you see that this guy just like
You want
like
you're
holy
making me guess.
holy
I tell
like
you I don't know.
my gosh,
You asked me to take
right?
a guess. You feel happy? I guessed atheist, and he's really an agnostic.
So much for fine
Well,
tuning in the
why don't we talk
universe.
to Darth Dawkins about what kind of worldview he has? He probably has a not God worldview.
How come God didn't fine tune your brain, John?
I don't make teleological arguments.
Altoid,
You
I'm
don't make
coming.
any arguments,
You're
John.
actually
You've
right,
Altoid,
never
I think
made
Rascal.
an argument.
you're not making any art. You don't make any.
He's
Yeah,
never made
exactly.
an
Like he's
argument.
even admitted, he never makes an
Correct.
argument. He's
Thank,
just here to
thank you,
No,
preach
we
Rascal.
because
just like to
he's like
discuss the definitions, the varying definitions of atheism and agnosticism. You never make an argument.
I don't like to discuss the definition of atheism. You guys do. Don't
Dude,
don't don't
get the fuck
don't
out of here,
pretend
John. Your
otherwise.
Wait, you do
all
that
your
all the
rooms,
time.
yeah, all your rooms are always about like actually like, well, do you lack belief that no gods
Yes,
exist,
those
or
are
I
or
lack
do you
propositional
like?
belief.
questions.
I
They're not
lack
definite.
belief. I lack
Hey, wait,
belief that this guy
Rascal, those are
possesses an
propositional
IQ.
questions. They're not definitional or semantic
Get the
questions.
fuck out of here! Like, give me a break,
Come on.
Do you believe there's no God has nothing to do with any, irrespective of what you
dude. That's
identify
all
as?
you
Do
argue
you
Well,
believe
about.
there's no
look.
God?
The funnier thing is about this guy is that while he says that he doesn't argue for the existence of God, whenever whenever the atheists bring arguments against the existence of God, he's always like, "That's not an issue. That's not an issue. You're just straw manning.
Right.
That's just an issue. You're
Yeah.
That's
just straw
correct.
manning." Like he doesn't even come up with an actual critique.
No,
It's like he's
I
emoting,
critique
right?
these so-called
You don't
problem with
critique it.
evil,
You don't critique it. You
this
misrepresent and misunderstand the view, right?
divine hiddenness. I find that to be also weak. And when you're talking
Listen,
about to and
John.
fro, that's a false dilemma. We can discuss that. Even
The
an
fuck are you
atheist,
talking
No, the
about?
admit.
even an atheist
Okay.
Okay, how
can
do you
put up
refute
the
divine
argument on it.
hiddenness then?
All
How
right.
do you
Yeah,
refute it?
I'd love to
Oh,
hear
let me
this.
guess. 3 second timer, right? How do you refute it? Go.
Yeah, you don't. There's a bad assumption that
Mute
God
him.
wants to reveal Himself to you.
What the fuck? How is that? How is that a
God.
refutation of that?
Oh, Tom is here. This is delicious. I mean, what do you think the Christian God is defined as if he's not
Not
the type
someone who
of
wants to
being that's
reveal Himself to you.
revelatory?
That's for
Dude,
sure.
are you fucking kidding me? Like,
Wait,
what
who?
are you talking
Where
about?
did Tom go? Oh,
What are you talking about,
it's
John? Right?
it's him. But wait,
So
rascal,
you're free
rascal,
to argue
rascal.
against this.
Not this time, Mouse. Look, it's built into the concept of the Christian God
That's
that he
false.
reveals
Right. That's
himself to
exactly what I
everyone.
was gonna say.
That's
Okay?
false. You
So
guys
if
are arguing
someone,
against.
okay, look, it's built into the concept of the Christian God that if he exists, he reveals himself to
Yeah.
everyone,
What are you
right?
talking
But
about?
You mentioned the word want.
if there are individuals which God hasn't revealed Himself towards, or they that, or let's just say it in another sense, right? If the Christian God exists, then I know that He exists. I do not know that He exists, therefore the Christian God does not exist. That's a modus tollens argument, right? So how are you gonna deny premise one by saying that He doesn't reveal Himself to everyone?
Well, he
Okay,
just
there's two
If
disagrees.
that just
revelations
follows, if that
in the
just
proposition.
follows from your worldview, it's entailed that the Christian God reveals
Rascal, did
himself
you
to
say
Yeah.
that?
everyone.
Well,
Could
he
I
just
explain
disagrees
without
with
being
that. He
interrupted?
just
Well,
disagrees.
I just
Are you
disagree.
guys
He
Because
willing
just
you
to be
interrupt
disagrees.
interrupted?
in the middle of a
I can try to
sentence.
answer it. Could I answer your question? So very simply, God, according to the scripture anyway, God.
You
You
muted
sound
yourself.
However, however, when it comes to special revelation, no, he chose to whom that he's going to reveal his son, right? Because the Father is revealed through the Son, and not right. And so those are two separate revelations.
The fuck are you talking about?
I could okay,
Oh
so
my
that
god.
that doesn't show. Look, the idea is that if God is personal, right, and he's all good, then how is he not going to have a commitment to have a personal relationship with certain creatures
Yeah, he's not obligated to you
which
whatsoever.
don't I never said anything about obligated, right? I'm just asking you, if he's all good, right, and he's a moral agent, then how is it the case that he doesn't have a commitment to reveal himself to people, even if, right, they're just the type of non-resistant non-believers, right, where they want to believe. And let's say God would have the intention to reveal himself to them, but he hasn't revealed himself to them, right?
That's the
So
false
how is it
assumption
the
that he has a
case,
commitment to you. He
how
does
is
not.
it the case, but no one's saying anything about obligatory, right? We're just saying in this example, God has the desire
God
to have a
doesn't have
personal
desires.
relationship with creatures. But okay, but then you're not, then you're not talking about the Christian
Of
God if he
course
doesn't
I
have any
am.
desire.
Of course I am.
Okay, so
What
then
I'm
how
No,
can
you're
saying
you
is
not.
be
that
all good?
what
How
I'm
can you
saying
be
is
all
that you're trying to
good?
argue
Can you
against the
shut
God.
up while I'm talking? How can he be all good if he doesn't have any like propositional states? He doesn't have any beliefs nor desires,
Yeah, I'm
right?
just saying
Like
that
if you
it's
say he's all good, he's going to be a moral agent, right? So he's going to have commitments.
no. I reject the proposition that God has any commitment toward the reprobate whatsoever.
How could
The
he be,
fuck?
He
how
might
could
be
he be all
committed. He
loving?
might be committed to sending them to
Answer me
hell
this.
if he's
Answer me
just.
this. How can he be all loving? How can he be all
He's
loving?
not all
If
loving.
loving
God,
isn't,
God
if
hated
loving under your
Esau.
view,
It's all.
can you shut up? You think by cutting me off, you're just going to score points, but you're
God
not,
is not all loving.
right? How is it the case? How is it the case that he can be all good if he doesn't have any
You're begging the
desires? Tell me
question.
that. How
It's
is
a
he
straw
different from a
man.
mechanism? How is he different from a mechanism? No,
God
it's
is not
actually a
all
valid
loving. What
question
part of
because you
that are you
think
not
God is all
understanding?
good.
How can he be loving at all? How can he love anything if he doesn't have fucking beliefs and
Who
desires?
says he doesn't? God is love, right?
You said
That
that he
does not mean
You
doesn't.
God
just
is all
did.
loving.
You said that he doesn't. Now you're contradicting yourself.
Zero contradictions.
Dude, you just said that. You
I
did.
said what? I
You
said what,
said you
rascal?
said God. Tom, did this guy just not say a moment ago that God had no desires?
He said verbatim, God does not have
That's correct.
Yep.
desires.
And now he's changing that. Now he's
No, I
changing
didn't
that to who
change that.
said God
When
has
did
no
I change that?
desires.
You
You
just
just
fucking.
changed it right now, you
Oh
idiot.
my
You just
god.
changed
What
it
was
by
the
saying
statement
who
that
said
contradicted
that he
that?
has no
What was this?
desires. You said that he has no desires. That was your original
Yeah,
proposition.
and what is the problem? What is the contradiction to that statement?
Holy
You're saying
shit.
that
Does God
he
want?
has and he does not have desires. You're saying that he
I
does
mean,
have
you take.
When
desires
did
and
I
he does
say he
not have
does?
desires.
When did I say that?
Originally you said that,
That's
and by the
false.
admission of Tom, you did say that,
That's
right?
false.
No one here
If
is
it's
going
recorded,
insane.
it's
And
recorded.
then
Why
you
don't you replay the
retracted
tape?
the first,
At no
and then
point
you
did I say.
retracted, and then you retracted the original proposition by then saying that who said that he
I've
doesn't
been
have
correcting you all
desires?
day, Darth. At no point did I say, quote unquote, God has desires. This is your imagination. At no point did I say God
Look,
loves
you
everyone or
claim
all
that he
loving.
doesn't have
No, I
desires,
constantly
right?
have been correcting you
So
and Altoids.
when we asked you afterwards, how is it the case that he can be all good if he doesn't have desires? You said, who said that he doesn't
No,
have
I actually said, who
desires?
said he
Right?
does?
Which can only be said by a person who thinks that It's not the case that God has no desires,
I
right?
never asked that way. I said, who says God has desires is how I asked it.
You did.
Look,
Rewind the
so how
tape.
is it the case? How is it the case that he's all good? You contradicted yourself, but that's
Zero
fine. That's what you always
contradictions.
do.
I mean, there's just like
How do
every
you
almost
establish
like
that
The
God
problem
is all
here, Darth,
good
is you
without
don't listen.
desires?
You assume what my God
How
like
is
represents.
it the
almost
case? How is it the case that God is all good if he has no beliefs nor desires?
Right. And so,
Go.
very simply, God is
And all knowing as
Right.
God is
well, because how does
perfectly
God have
good.
knowledge if he doesn't have
Yeah.
beliefs?
But God being perfectly good does not necessarily represent that God loves everyone. This is actually a humanistic
No one said,
view
look,
of a God.
that we didn't
What are
say
you
You
anything.
talking
said,
We didn't
about?
Darth, you
say
said
anything
God is
about
quote
that. We
unquote all
said, how
loving.
can he be all good if he doesn't have desires?
You claim my God was quote unquote all loving, and I interjected and said that's false.
Okay, forget about that. How can he love
Why
at
would we forget
all
about it?
if he
Why don't
doesn't
we
have
go through
desires?
everything
Answer
that
me
you're
the fucking
claiming,
question.
such as
Answer the question.
being all good? Now, what
Answer
you
the
mean by that?
question.
Yeah,
John, let me try.
hang on. Being all
No,
good does
hang
not
on. You're not
necessarily
listening.
entail, if you want to let me finish, being all good
You're
does
not
not necessarily
listening.
entail being good to all, okay?
He
Being
didn't
all
say
That
that.
good
That's
that
not.
we're not That's
represents
not the
being
question,
perfectly
dumbass. The
good,
question is
like
the
okay?
like
question
nobody
is how
cares
can
about
So
this
no one
point,
needs
the
to
John.
be good to
question
you.
is how does he
Good,
love anything if he doesn't have
if
beliefs nor
anything, God
desires?
being
Mute him.
just and
Mute him.
right and
Mute
sending
him.
people.
Mute him until he gets
Do
the point.
not do not send him down if you want him to come back up. You know he's got that stupid rule, right? So
Yeah, I
if you
know.
Yeah.
do that, if you
Just keep
send him
muting him.
down expecting him to come back up, you're
No,
being very silly
but
because
he
you're you know a
won't. I
stupid
mean,
policy.
you can just tell that he just engraves in this, right? He just loves this stuff.
Right,
Or
right,
else he
right. But
Well,
would.
I mean,
He's,
like,
you
look,
love
I mean,
cutting people
like,
off, Darth.
God's actions are like either
You want to bloviate for about
entail
3 minutes and
eh,
give me about 5 seconds.
Shut
look,
up. Shut up. Mute him.
you're
Somebody make me a mod so I can make it my job to mute him.
like all God's actions either entail or are like implicit that God has desires. Like God creates the law for us. Do you think God doesn't desire that we follow His law?
Yeah, but you have an anthropomorphic view of the
Oh,
God
here he
person.
goes with that shit. I
yeah,
knew he
but
was
how's
going to
that
say
an
that.
answer to what Tom is saying? Like, look, how can a being issue commandments if it's not an agent, if it doesn't have beliefs nor
We already
desires?
discussed this with Detroit for about an hour or two, and there was,
Yeah, but
That's
and now you guys
irrelevant
are
to the
Destroyer
back
point.
to
asked you the
straw
same
manning
question.
again.
Destroyer asked you the same
You
question.
guys were there as if you heard nothing that we discussed, and then you're
Why are
back
you
to your straw manning
pretending
because
that
you're
Destroyer
comfortable
Dude,
with
it's
that.
that you're
irrelevant. You're
right?
not answering.
There's no possible world where Destroyer thinks you're right about anything. But look, how is it the case? How is
It's
it the
not that I
case
think
that
he's
God
right. He
has?
understood what I
How
was
is it the
saying.
case? You're going to predicate two things
He didn't
upon God,
misrepresent me
right?
like you guys are trying to
Which
do
I think,
constantly.
if you don't think God is an agent, I don't know how you can make sense of how he has these things, right? So you're going to say that God is omniscient. How is God omniscient if he has no beliefs,
Yeah.
right? And the second part, the more interesting part is, how is it the case that God is all good and he loves his creation if he doesn't
No,
have
he
any
doesn't love his
desires?
creation. Where do you get that idea? Once again,
How is it the case?
You
you
robot.
How is it the
continue to have a
case? How
false
is it the
idea and ask
case?
stupid questions on a
It's not a
God
stupid
that is
question.
not even the
You're
God of the
just an
Bible.
idiot. You're just an idiot. Does it not say that God is love in the
It does not
Bible?
say
Okay,
God is
how is
all
that the
loving. Do you want me
case
to
if he
tell you
has
what
no
that means,
desires?
Darth?
Nobody said all loving, you dumb fuck.
No,
You dumbass. No
Darth
one
said
said
all
all.
loving, Sean.
No,
Replay the
he
tape.
didn't.
Yes, he did.
He corrected. He just asked you,
And then he
love his
continues to ask
creation.
the same questions,
No.
assuming.
No, he
Well,
doesn't. No, he
let me
doesn't. You're
tell.
just not
Well,
catching up.
how about this? How
Catch
about
up.
I explain to him
Stop
what God is
addressing.
love means? Would you like
Oh
to know
yeah.
what God is love means in the Bible, Darth? I'll gladly explain it to
It
you.
Oh
doesn't
no,
matter.
here
I'm
we go.
asking you, how is it the case that he's all good if he has no desires? Just answer me the fucking question.
Yeah, very simply, God is good, right? Doesn't mean good to everyone,
That's
all
not the
good. God is
fucking
perfectly good.
question.
That's
It
what
How
doesn't
that
is he
answer
means.
the
all good if he has no
question.
desires, you fucking pussy? Just answer the fucking question.
And then when you want to talk about God as love, we can talk about that
What?
too. And
That's
Answer the
not
fucking
listen,
answering
I'm not going
question.
to
anything.
be
No one is
subject to
saying
your
anything about all
interrogations. You can
loving. We're
either
just
hear me or
saying,
not.
how is it the case that he's all good?
Just mute him until he
You
answers the
can't
question.
answer the fucking question.
He plied him with many questions, but Jesus gave him no answer.
Oh, yeah, exactly.
Oh, I mean, there you
Exactly.
go. I mean,
That's the point. You can't give a fucking answer. You're a fucking coward.
he just loves this stuff, right? Like
No, he
Just
like
give
doesn't
a
make
simple
any fucking
answer.
sense.
like I don't want
He,
to hear any I don't want to hear
Feel free to
anyone
snivel.
I don't want
Feel
to
free to
hear
snivel.
anyone coming on stage kink kink shaming for John because he obviously loves this stuff. It's every day with this guy. Every day we ask him simple questions, and just like EF, right? Although I mean the disanalogous part is that EF doesn't consent to being butt fucked so many times.
Well, you
This
guys are a
guy,
little
Shut
bit
when
up,
worse than
asked
Darth
John.
when
Dawkins.
asked
Shut up,
simple
John.
questions, when asked simple questions, just like EF, he evades. He can't answer the question at all. He just
You're sounding like
deflects.
Darth
he
Dawkins
knows he
now.
can't.
He knows
He's
that
a
he can't
better
answer
he's
the
a
He
better
knows he
question,
can't.
just like
dodger
Yeah,
EF.
than
prevaricating, right? Right, Darth? Dodging, right? Is that what I'm
Yeah,
doing?
that's what
yeah.
you're doing.
Yeah, you're not having a
Yeah, you're
conversation.
prevaricating.
Can I ask some
Yeah, you
comments
Conversation.
answer.
Yeah,
about
that's
You
right.
answer
It's not
questions
a
that
It's
weren't asked.
conversation.
fun. It's fun. It's
No,
fun to do
this
this
is
with
not an
John,
you.
interrogation, Rascal. I'm not
John,
subject to
he
your
wants
Yes, it
an
interrogation.
answer.
is.
Look, it's really simple, John. He wants an answer to a specific question.
And he doesn't
If you don't
deserve
want
one.
to answer the question, just say, okay. Now you've
Just
made it
say
clear.
you don't
You're just
want to
simply not
answer
going to
the
answer.
question.
Yeah,
Doesn't
exactly.
deserve
Yeah.
one.
Just say I'm not going to answer the question. Don't
Okay.
pretend like you're going to or talk about.
No, I don't
Just say I
pretend.
refuse to answer the question.
No, I make
Yeah.
comments. Clearly, I make comments and correcting
What?
some of the false
No, shut
assumptions that he
up. No, we
makes.
don't want your
He makes leading
commentary.
We
questions.
don't
We
want
don't
the.
want your
He has loaded
commentary.
questions. I
It's
could
very
expose that too
obvious
if
that
he's
you just
willing.
want to delve in the
You
meta
just
and
keep
you don't
over
want to deal
talking.
with
Ever notice
arguments.
that?
You just want to roll around in the dirt with the
You can't
pigs.
have
What does it
anyone
say
speak
in
for more than 30
what does it
seconds.
say in Romans? Something like they're like pig, like the truth is like
Don't even
pigs to the
try. I
slime or
mean,
Yeah,
something.
don't even try to
Bro,
quote
Something
scripture,
fine.
Sean. Clearly, you're out of your league when it comes to scripture.
Oh yeah, I'm out of my
I mean,
league.
says the guy who got a 10 out of 20 on his Bible test. Like Jesus, that's a
That was
failing
rigged
grade.
too.
Holy
I
shit.
probably got a 19
Tom,
out of
did you
20,
know
if I
that?
recall.
Rigged.
Did you know that, Tom R? He got a 10 out of 20 on his Bible test.
Allegedly.
Well, that's just
What
pathetic.
That's it.
what Bible test?
Daniel
The
asked him a
Bible
set of
test.
questions relating to Scripture, and he got 10 right out of the 20 in
Yeah,
total.
What's the source of the
according
What
to
the
the
question?
fuck?
Because
rigged counting, yeah.
I could probably create a test that
Daniel, what's
was.
the set of questions that you asked him, if you remember? I guess Daniel
Yeah,
isn't
he
No,
here.
I'm just
probably doesn't
asking like the
remember.
source. I mean, like, look, I could create a test that
Yeah,
John might
I'll
score 0 out
DM
of
him
20. I
what
mean,
the source was.
it's only interesting if I know like the question or the source of the question
It's like
or who
Trivial
made it,
Pursuit.
where it came from.
One of the questions was like, who were the Nephilim and like other
And I
stuff.
answered that
He
properly.
couldn't answer.
What are you talking about?
On how specific the
The
questions are. If
Nephilim are
it's like what
clearly when the
tribe
sons of
gives us its
God,
code or something.
right, breeded with the daughters of men. And so why would I not know that answer? That
The
goes into
sons of
Joshua.
God?
It goes
The
into
what?
like what?
Yeah, what? The
What do you mean?
sons of.
Yeah, what does that mean?
Well,
It's
I
in
mean,
Genesis 6.
that's
That's
the
technically right.
Nephilim. Are you guys that ignorant
Who
of
are,
who the Nephilim are?
yeah, I am. Who are the sons of God?
Some people think it's referring to angels.
The point being that
I'm asking, what does John think?
I knew more about the Nephilim than the questioner, and the
That's
questioner
fine. That's
claimed
great.
I got it
Look,
wrong.
yeah, you know more. Great. What is the sons of God? What does that mean?
It's irrelevant to who the sons of God are because the question is about the
Tom,
Nephilim.
do you
The
just see this guy?
Nephilim,
I
hang
mean,
on, the Nephilim, the
it just
progenitors
blows
of the
the F out of the
Nephilim
water.
are the
It,
sons of God. Who the sons of
yeah,
God are
bro, but
irrelevant to the
yeah,
question.
but that's not informative if I don't know what sons of God means.
Once again, see, you guys are. The question was, who are the Nephilim? I properly answered it. Now you guys
Yeah,
are
but
saying, who are the sons
okay,
of
fine, I
God?
agree. I'm asking you, like, I don't know what sons of God means. I'm asking you as someone who's
Yeah,
ignorant. You
the sons
perhaps
of
know.
God are the progenitors of the Nephilim.
So dumb.
But what is that? I think he's asking for clarification, John. He's just saying that he's genuinely
I
curious because he doesn't
understand.
know what it
I
means.
understand. But if
Yeah.
it's some
If
kind
you
of,
don't know or aren't going to answer the question, just tell me. I'll drop it, just
I
like the
have
other
an.
question.
This is, there's discussions on who the sons of God are, right?
Then why don't you just do you have an opinion yourself,
I do. I
or
have a personal opinion.
okay? Can
I
you please
might.
tell me?
Yeah, I think that the sons of God talked about are the fallen angels,
Okay, how hard? Why was that so difficult?
because it's not necessarily factual. It's just it's speculation.
I'm not asking for like a fact. I'm asking you what you
But
think.
the whole point, Tom, was that particular question about the Nephilim and all the other questions, I actually got them correctly. But with the rigged, judges, I only got 10 out of 20 or whatever, right, Daniel?
Rigged? Oh my god.
Could I ask Sean a question?
I thought
How is this guy any
What a
different
angels.
from like
Could
goofball.
I ask Sean a
EF
question?
or like
I, I thought angels were supernatural.
Oh my god.
Well,
May I ask Sean a question?
so our suke or soul
look at
is considered
look at
supernatural as well.
look at this guy's profile picture. That's exactly what John is, like a fucking UFC punching bag.
And that's the best you guys
He's,
have, is to come up with memes, come up with mockery.
yeah, what and you can
This is all you guys
and
have.
no, that's not the
That's all
best
you're
we
good
have.
for.
That's not the.
That's all you're good for.
I mean,
Uh,
just with that enough, just by the evading of questions you do on a regular basis. I mean, mockery would just be sufficient, right, with you.
I mean, if I could count the loaded questions that you guys come up with, and when I tell you why it's loaded, you
Funny,
guys still ask
Tom,
the
how this
stupid
guy
questions again.
thinks. It's funny, Tom, how this guy thinks that, whenever he sees atheists debating, no matter who it is, right? Like me, Jack, Josh, like Venus, Mars bars, whoever it is, right? He's always like, "Oh, I mean, that's just the questions that they're bringing are just such sophistry, right? It's just so loaded questions." But when a theist does it, even when it's like a fucking Muslim, right? This guy's like, "Oh man, that guy was so on point. That guy was so succinct," and they would talk about topics that this guy doesn't even know of, right? It's just like, why, like this guy just like loves to get like dunked on every single day. I've never seen anything like it. Like
Just because you had a poor
I have
performance
to
I've never
give
against
it
the
seen
to him.
Sharia
anything
I have
like
to
it.
give
Muslim,
it to him.
Darth,
It's
He's not a
true.
coward. He's not a
you had a
coward.
very
He's
poor
not like EF
performance,
and J
Darth.
Robin and all these guys who like hide in
Well,
their
I mean,
caves,
like,
right?
but what's not cowardice if he's not answering any
Well, I
questions?
mean
He's not even really going into
that would
battle,
be the
though.
property of cowardice that he exhibits, right?
Yeah,
That would be the
Tom,
only thing that's
if you
indicative.
ever watch me in some of the other rooms, Tom, I'll sit there for 3 hours and be asked a series of questions, of which I avoid none. This right here is not a Q&A session. This is an interrogation of loaded questions, and I'm not going to participate in that. If you could understand that.
Yeah, but you pride yourself
You
on answering
dishonest
questions, don't you?
cunt. Like, it never starts out like this. Like, it always devolves into this because you refuse to answer unloaded, simple questions.
Well,
You just,
look
you're
at
just,
how
you,
Altoid
you
began.
refuse to be
Look
honest.
at how
Like,
Altoid began. He
who
kept
can deal with
talking for
that?
5 minutes about all that exists,
Yeah, but
and I told him,
Bro, I asked you like,
it had to do with
what are the
all that's
sons?
created,
Look
and
at,
he doesn't
bro,
want to let
I
go of
haven't.
it.
How long did it take me to get an answer about the sons of God? What did I do to you?
I,
Did you not get an answer, Tom? Were you disappointed in the length? It
I
wasn't
got
on
an answer,
demand.
but I had to work so hard
You
for
think you
it.
really had to pull teeth?
Oh yeah.
Well,
yeah,
there
he
you
did.
go then.
I'm going to second Tom on that one.
All right. Well, then there you go.
All
There's
you
a
could have
witness.
said was, "What are the Nephilim?" I personally believe they are fallen angels, but it's debated. That's all you would have
Because
had to
because
say.
because Caleb, to me, it was a red herring because the conversation was whether I got the question of
No,
Nephilim
here he
right.
goes again.
As soon as I demonstrated that I actually did get it right, then there's an obfuscation of another question, which I was trying to divert it back to the original topic,
No,
was that
you
I
weren't.
got the question enough from wrong, Caleb. And so maybe you heard a question that was not answered, but to me it was a diversionary question in a sense that it was the question of whether I got the answer of the Nephilim correct or
So,
not.
John,
That was the topic.
in that 20
Did anybody
listed
get that?
questions, which ones were loaded in your opinion? Can you give an example of one that you thought was loaded out of those
No,
20?
none of them were we're not
Okay.
talking about Daniel's trivial questions, okay? I'm talking about Darth Arianus, Jack, Altoid, whoever,
Give
Sean,
an
whoever
example
Yeah,
of one of
well,
our
you
loaded
asked a
questions
series of
then.
yeah,
questions
Give
yeah.
that
an
are
How
loaded.
example.
is yeah?
And
What
here's
part of what I
here's the
said was
problem,
loaded?
Caleb. When they ask
Just
the
give
question,
this
they take
guy
about
like
3 to 5 minutes asking it. As soon as after the 3 to 5 minutes, they want a very simple yes or no. I tell them when I go through to even
but those
describe
are yes
why
or no
it's loaded,
questions
to
though. Yeah,
demonstrate
those
why
are
it's
yes or
loaded, they
no
cut me
questions.
off. They cut me off in about maybe 5 seconds
Look
or
who's
so, ten
talking. The
seconds
But
guy who cuts me
to
off
say
when I
that I'm
ask
John,
somehow
you a question.
obfuscating from the question, their loaded question, when I'm trying to tell them why it's loaded. I
but
think it's my prerogative to tell them why it's loaded.
But John, we've been in other group chats, and this is something that's been consistent with you. If it was just this chat, then you could perhaps say that. But if this is the same issue you've had in every chat you've been in, even when they haven't been in it, including chats with mostly Christians, then I don't think we can really blame them entirely. I'm not saying they're completely fault to blame, but I think you have to say a good portion of it is on the way that you interpret and answer questions, and you do have a tendency, and I'm trying to say this respectfully, to really exfoliate and go overly long on questions and talk around them when sometimes people just want a point. And look, some questions you can't just answer point blank, but most of the time, sometimes you can just give a yes or no and then explain it. But when people just talk overly long about it, usually that's a way to get out of the question, and a lot of people just
Well, I'll tell you what, Caleb. I subject myself to street epistemology over and over again. I go to the Muslim rooms. They ask me questions over and over again. They even create rooms for it. If you watch
Here we
Caleb,
go.
if you're
Example.
interested, if you're interested in watching any of those recorded things, right, you will find I don't object to the questions. I answer them to the best of my ability, and I don't try to ask questions myself. I simply am there
Yeah,
to
but in
answer
No,
those
John,
questions.
you
rooms,
answer
So you're
those rooms,
questions
talking
that
you
about
don't
some
nobody
answer
other
asks.
rooms, Caleb,
questions, right? You
right?
don't answer
If you
questions.
ever
What you
notice,
No,
do,
you
people want
don't.
to
He doesn't.
interrupt
what you
me
do
all
in
the
those
time,
rooms actually
and
is
if
not
you
even
notice,
confront
Caleb,
them
that
at
people
all.
just
All you do is
constantly
just
try to
like,
overtalk me, and
smooch like
this is
you
what
like
goes on.
bend over to like their dick, right?
But
Like
like the point
we've
is,
seen the
it's
recordings.
street epistemology, right?
Like, yeah, like what is this
No,
guy
you guys
talking
are no
about?
better than a Darth Dawkins world views and conflict room where he tries to do the interrogation. You guys try to one up him, and you guys are worse than he is.
Yeah. Okay.
How?
Okay, buddy. No, I mean,
How?
what? Why are you gonna take the bait on that, Rascal? I mean, this guy. This guy, I mean, I mean, this guy's just been trolling atheists for like 3 decades, right? Like before any, like most of us were born, he was already doing this garbage. Let's
Yeah.
invite Delano up. I mean, this guy's amazing. Go ahead, Delano.
Yeah, you took it out of my mouth. You know, this fucking retard has been doing this. What he describes as answering questions is just spitting this retarded rhetoric back and forth. Like they'll do these 5 minute spiels, which are fucking, nothing of substance. But when asked a question that holds his fucking feet to the fire, that's not what he's used to, right? And then fucking the Discord crew came over to fucking Clubhouse. His feet are being held to the fire. And now he's just fucking butthurt. There's no other way to put it. He's just not used to fucking be accountable for his views. He's so fucking retarded.
Cool story, bro.
Do you disagree?
This guy's great.
He just disagrees, Delano. He just
You don't
disagrees.
disagree that you respond to fucking questions with preaching and things that amount to nothing to answer the question?
John, you know what you do, John? You answer
I
questions
don't
that
preach.
nobody asked. That's what
You
happens.
think I
Like
preach,
you answer
rascal?
questions that nobody actually asked.
You
Like
think
you
I
answer
preach?
your own
You think I
questions.
bloviate? I do not.
Yeah, you do.
Absolutely,
When
You
you
absolutely,
absolutely
when
do.
you were
That's all
100%.
responding
you
to
do.
Darth a second ago, you mentioned street epistemology and Muslims. Why?
Because it was my support that I sit there and answer questions for hours on end without objection.
Why won't you answer the questions with yes or no that fucking Darth asks you?
Because I contrasted them with the interrogations and loaded questions that Darth Arianus persists in making, and I don't want to be participant to those. I'm
If
just
it's not a
demonstrating
problem to
that I
answer
have
the
a
question,
history of
why won't you
answering
just
questions,
answer the fucking
just not
questions,
dishonest
John? Quit
questions.
being a
That's all.
dishonest cunt.
If you want to overtalk me, go right
I
ahead.
think you
That's
should
not
because you
uncommon.
bloviate.
John, like, here's the thing, right? Here's what I've noticed, right? It seems to be that pretty much every time you're in a room, the issue at hand, it revolves around you. So the common denominator, I think, in all these instances, is you, and not everybody
I
else.
agree,
But
not
you
my
haven't figured
argument.
that out
Correct.
yet.
Yes, I agree, Rascal. If you ever notice, and you notice some of the questions I ask, I've had about what 4 or 5 rooms simply asking atheist basic
No, no,
questions.
no, John,
If you ever
John,
notice
John.
it,
Let's
it
look at
turns
this.
around.
What you do
It
is
gets turned around into how dishonest I am. The
no.
question,
What
do
you
you
do,
believe there are no
John, is
gods, is
you
not a
argue.
dishonest question.
What you
And
do,
you
John,
want to
is you're
overtalk me,
obsessed.
and then
Yeah, I'm
people
going to
overtalk
overtalk
me
you because
just
you're
like
lying.
that, Rascal. And this is what
You're
happens
lying.
all the time.
Because John, what you do is you obsess about the definition of
That's
atheism
false. That's
versus other
false.
things. That's your obsession. You don't want to talk about anything like you do this little word gameplay, right? Where like,
That's
well,
also
do
false.
you? No, it's not false because you do this game right with people who are agnostic or agnostic atheists. You just forget. Well, do you lack belief that in the non-existence of
No,
gods, or
that's
do
not.
you
No,
lack
now you're
belief
misrepresenting my
in gods
question.
that exist? Yes, you do. You do it all the fucking time, and I pointed out to you how it's
I'll tell
ridiculous.
you my
You should just
question.
listen to what the person is saying
Yes.
and move on. But you don't do
The
that.
very
You have
simple
to
question,
rearrange their.
Rascal.
Can you shut up? You have to rearrange their position in
No, I
like these,
don't.
these
I don't
ridiculous
rearrange
word
their
games.
position.
Dude, that's all you do. I mean, it's
Rascal,
literally all
Rascal.
you do.
Let me explain, okay? I asked them a very simple question. Do you believe there is no God? This is what I ask them. And it doesn't matter about what they label themselves. I don't care if they label themselves agnostic, agnostic atheist, a hard atheist, a
No,
weak
you
atheist.
do
It
care.
doesn't
That's why
matter.
That's
you say
fucking
they're an
So
false,
very
atheist,
man.
simple.
John. That's a
Now you guys wanted to
you
interrupt me
care
again.
so
Okay.
much that you
You
say
notice how you
atheists
guys just
don't
keep over
exist.
talking me,
That's how
right?
much you care.
So very simply, I asked them that question. And when I asked them that question, do you believe there's no God? Interesting enough, Rascal, this is very interesting. About
Here we
60%
go.
of them, 60% of them say yes, and about 40% of them say no, right?
Who
And
cares?
each question, I go, I
I
find it
I
interesting
have
that they
I
say
have
that
good
some atheists say
intuitions.
yes. Hang on. I find it
Who
interesting that
cares,
some atheists
John?
say
Don't
yes
wouldn't you
and
rather
some
talk
say
about
no.
things that are
And when
substantive,
I
like
hang
what
on,
they actually
has
believe
nothing to do with
and what you
semantics or
actually believe?
definitions. It has everything to do with propositions,
I lack
propositional
belief
Oh
that
attitudes,
my
God
right?
has a
God.
brain.
Listen to this
John,
guy.
Okay,
what are
so
you
you could,
doing?
so this is what you guys do. You overtalk me. You stop
Could
when the
someone be a
line of
better
question
moderator?
proceeds. Then people
He
try
just
to
keeps going.
obstruct, and this
No,
is what you
John.
guys do. Very
John, it
simple
never gets
question.
past that. No, in your rooms when that happens, right? Like everybody gets just frustrated with you because you go on to this whole thing where you have to like you keep asking them different questions that trying to twist their
That's
position
not
about or
true
their
either.
definition, right? Shut up.
That's
So
true.
shut up. Let me finish. Right. So what happens is it never gets to anything substantive. It
Because you
never
guys
gets to
want
the
to
point
throw
where
a riot.
you have to defend John. It never gets to the point where you actually are defending your God belief, right? It never gets to that.
Wait a
That's why
minute.
you do it. You do it to
Why should I
obfuscate so
defend
that
my
you so
God
that-
belief when I'm
John, can I
asking an
fucking
He
atheist
finish?
wants
question?
attention. It's
Oh my
obvious by
God,
now
this
to
guy.
anyone that he just wants attention. That's why
Well,
he's
it's
always
negative
going into
attention
these rooms,
too.
right? Just
Well, the
knowing that he
reason
Why
can
you
just
in
want to
the
get
be
world,
able
Rascal,
humiliated.
would you
the
expect
reason
me?
you want to be able to defend your belief, John, is because to have a belief without reasons is to be irrational. Do you
That's what
agree?
I asked the atheist,
No,
Delano.
just
I
answer
said,
my
when they
question. Answer my
Delano,
question. Do you agree?
Delano, when they
Yes
say
or
I believe
no?
there's no
Yes
God,
or
uh,
no?
John, answer the
hang on. I asked
question.
them, is your belief
Yes
based
or
upon
no,
evidence?
John?
I want to.
John, answer the
You've just
question.
proven the fucking point of all this, John. You've just proven it.
Yeah, this is the
You
best
can't
part
answer a single fucking
when he
question.
goes, "Do you believe in the non-existence of
No,
gods
I
based
don't.
on no evidence?"
If I
That's
ask
always my
them,
Sorry.
favorite part.
Sorry. Are
Roscoe,
you
if
going to
I
answer
ask
the
them, do you
question,
believe
buddy?
there's no
Answer the
God,
question,
and they
John.
answer yes, why would it be
Look,
irrational
I
for
don't
me
need
to
a
then
fucking
ask, is your
example.
belief
Are
based
you going to
upon any
answer the
evidence?
question? Yes or no?
That's a normal question.
Yes or
No,
no?
John. When someone tells you, John, like when someone says to you, like, "Look, I'm agnostic
No,
atheist."
we're not talking
Okay,
about
fine.
labels here. We're
John,
not
shut
talking
the
about
fuck up.
labels.
So, John, shut the fuck up. I can't
You're
finish
the
a
one
sentence
trying to
with you.
make it about
So when they say
labels.
that, John, you know what it means. So you say that right there, just basically saying to you that they don't accept the proposition that God exists, right? But they don't deny.
Hang on, Rascal.
No, you hang on. So you know what they mean. And then
No,
when
I
there's a
don't.
hard atheist,
No, I
right?
don't, and I'll tell you
Yes, you
why.
do.
No, I
Yes, you
don't.
do.
I'll tell you
When there's a
why.
hard topic, you
I've
know what
met.
they mean.
Would you
You've
let me
been
finish? I'll
talking to atheists
explain
for
why
30
that's not
years,
true.
and you don't know what they mean.
I don't know what they mean. I'll tell you why if you're
You're a
willing to
fucking
listen.
liar.
Okay, I'll tell you why. I've met agnostic atheists who claim to believe there are no gods, but does not claim to know that this belief is true. I
Here
have
he goes
also
again
met
with
agnostic
this.
atheists who claim to lack a belief in God and doesn't claim to know that no gods exist. Okay, these
Here
are
he
two
goes.
separate.
This is
There's
the
one.
thing
There's
that he's
one
so
agnostic who
interested in,
believes there's
right? It's
no
just like
God,
the Steve McRae thing, right? He just
and
like
there's one
Right.
other
Exactly.
Yeah.
group.
oh.
And you
Loves
guys
it.
want to
At least
interrupt
Steve
what I just
McRae
said, but
knows
go. Feel
logic,
free.
right? This guy doesn't even have that.
So when
John,
someone
why don't
says
you just
they're
ask them what
agnostic
they
atheist,
believe
Rascal, it
instead
does
of
not answer the
pulling labels?
question of whether they believe there's no God or
Yeah,
not.
John. When
So
a
I have
person
to
says to you,
explicitly
they
ask.
don't. When a person says to you, they don't accept the proposition that God exists, but they don't reject it. You know what they mean, but you want to like dig more into that.
I do want to
You
dig
know,
more
like
into
you
that.
say you've been debating. You
I
say you've been
love to
debating
dig more
atheists
into that.
for 30
Yeah,
years,
I love
so
to
you
dig
know.
into that
And you know
because I
what? For
can't
30
hide
years,
behind
you've
the
been
label
asking the
anymore.
same fucking stupid questions.
To be honest, John, I think you confuse people because that question has a lot of
Yeah,
double negatives when
purposely.
you're asking
You
it,
do it
and
Wait a
purposely.
minute,
I think
Caleb.
I think it
Wait a
misleads
minute,
people.
Caleb.
This what was that?
Caleb. The
Yeah.
state the word agnostic atheist does
Uh-huh.
not claim to know that no God exists. That's a double negative. How about trying to reword that one?
Look,
How
real
about
quick
trying to
before you give
reword
this
that?
guy another fucking out. John, do you think it's fucking irrational to have these beliefs
How
without
do you
reason?
reword does not
Yeah,
claim
keep
to
fucking
know that
dodging the
I
no
asked
You
him
question,
God
you
could
that.
say
exists?
you
goddamn
could say
cunt. You're
non-theism.
such a
You could
fucking
say
piece of shit.
Jack, I love this guy.
I
I love the
agree.
logic.
Yeah.
Are you
He's
want to
just
answer that, Caleb? With the
just
Mr. Double
railing
John,
on
you
this
Negative?
I mean,
guy.
you could just it
Oh, let me
depends if
invite
they're I mean
Jack.
they're well, John, there are different kinds of atheists, but if they were like a naturalist, for example, you could say, do
Hang
you
on,
know
your
that
comment
naturalism
was
is true?
about
It's a
double
much
negative,
simpler.
was it not, Caleb? How do you
Yes,
reword
but I
does
just gave
not
you an
claim to
example.
know that no God exists?
You could say, I do not know that naturalism is true, or I do not know that atheism is true, like that. Not
John,
that naturalism and atheism are analogous, because they don't have to be mutually exclusive.
John, John, do you think it's a good idea for a person to believe in something that they have no evidence for?
I meet the atheist who believes there's no God, who acknowledges that they have no
John,
Why
do
don't
evidence
you
to
just
you
answer the
prove that
do
there's
you
no
question?
think
God.
John, but that's not the question.
So you tell me,
John,
Rascal.
the question was, do you think it's a good idea to believe in something for which you have no evidence
Yeah, I'm
for?
not an evidentialist.
Holy shit. It's a simple question. You never fucking
Yeah,
answer
very
it.
simply, Rascal.
His answer is no.
I think there's certainly justifiable
This fucking
beliefs.
guy.
Troll,
Would
troll,
you want an
troll,
answer or
troll.
not?
It's a yes or a no. And you're fucking
I already
like go
did answer
say
it.
yes
I
or
already
no
did
and
It's
answer
then
a
you,
say what
trolley
your
Rascal.
problem.
answer
Right? It's reasonable to believe without
I
evidence.
can't imagine how this fucking guy fills out the
Right?
answers on his taxes.
Evidence
Like,
is
what?
not the only reason. Listen, evidence is not the only
is.
basis by which beliefs are justified. Okay, there are reasons. Reasons are not necessarily evidence.
This
John,
There can be
guy,
logical
this
John,
fucking
reasons
guy
John,
to
probably
believe
John.
a
has never
I
proposition
didn't
signed
is
ask
not
that
true
even
question. I
without
didn't
one
ask that question.
contract.
evidence.
I didn't ask that question. I didn't ask about reasons. What I asked was, do you think it's a good idea to believe in something for which you have no evidence?
Yes, there are many scenarios by which that's the
Holy.
case. Not necessarily
Oh,
so
really?
though.
Like what? Like what? Like what?
It's reasonable to believe that the axioms of logic are true.
They're self-evident. That's fucking ridiculous. Now, so what
So
you're talking about, that's a totally different situation.
self-evident
Yes, they're
propositions, right?
self-evident. That's what it means to be an axiom. They're
Propositions that are
self-evident.
obvious, right?
Oh my God, this guy.
Yeah,
Okay, beside
John,
the axioms, John, are there any beliefs that you should believe without evidence besides
axioms are by
put that aside.
definition accepted as true,
Okay,
right? Believed as true without proof or
they're
demonstration.
self-evident. That's different. What the fuck?
but putting those aside, John, are there any beliefs that are not necessarily axiomatic that you would still believe? Like you could say that, belief in the external world is not axiomatic. It's not logically impossible that it could be false, but
I'll
but
give
our
you one
experience is
example, Caleb,
evidence.
that minds exist external to my own. I have reason to
Yeah,
believe
but
that. I don't have any evidence.
well, your evidence is an
I mean,
analogical
There we
there's tons of
go.
argument.
evidence. What the fuck are you talking about?
No,
Did you hear
Yeah,
that?
You could say
Mr.
people are
John
being
has
fucking
Objectivist,
silly, and
can you
evidence.
that's
believe
John
that?
has evidence that John has evidence that he's a brain in a vat and he knows it. Right? He's the only
I
type of
have
brain in
no
a vat
I
that
have no
knows it.
evidence that Solipsism is
Fuck you
false,
all.
but I have reason
Oh
to believe
god.
it
Fuck
is.
you all. Fuck you.
Jo-
Fuck
John, are
you.
you on record as
Okay,
having
who's that?
said that you believe in God without evidence? Would that be a fair assessment?
Without empirical evidence, sure. I mean, but here's
Without
another thing.
evidence, right? Yes or
If
no?
God exists,
No, he has no evidence either
everything
way. He has no
yeah,
evidence. He doesn't even argue
everything in
for the existence
creation
of
is
God on any
evidence for God.
level, right?
I've never heard him argue for, he even prides himself on that, right? He says, I
Wait,
don't actually
guys.
argue for the
Here's the
That's
God.
question,
correct,
right? If he
Roscoe.
doesn't have empiric evidence for God, what non-empiric evidence do you
No, he
have
doesn't have
for
any.
your belief in
He's
God?
already admitted to that
Continuing
in the past. He
presupposition.
doesn't have any sort of evidence.
No, what I am saying, Altoid, is this. Okay, if God exists, everything is evidence
Oh,
for
here,
God. Everything.
there we
Okay,
go.
okay,
There
Well,
here
we
you
we
have
There we
to
go.
hold
argue
go.
on,
for
Yeah.
hold
that
on.
first,
What do you
John.
mean
Just
by
like I fucking
evidence there?
predicted. You fucking moron. Of course he was gonna say that.
By hold on, by evidence you mean like count in favor
Yeah.
of a certain belief?
Yeah, I didn't hear you, by the way.
By
You're-
Can you hear me, everyone?
Yeah, we hear
Yes.
you.
Okay, so by evidence you mean like counting in favor of a certain belief rather than, I guess the negation of the belief, right?
Well, I mean, I just don't. I mean, like for instance, with the conditional premise that God exists, right? Everything in
Premise.
existence is evidence for
Wait,
God.
what do you mean
That
by
Fuck
moron?
is a
Conditional,
Condition.
conditional
given that God
premise? What do you
Jack.
exists.
mean?
Conditional premise, Jack.
wait,
Yeah, what
so
the fuck is that,
here
John?
let me just like explain something very quickly. If I say I have evidence that my car isn't working, right? Then that's to say there's, evidence as well to say that the car doesn't like run, right? If we define car working as like running properly. Would you disagree with that?
No, I wouldn't disagree with that.
Okay. So if the world is like if the world existing, uh, we observe any phenomena in the world, and that's coherent with the hypothesis that God exists, and it's coherent with the hypothesis that God doesn't exist, then in virtue of what is it evidence?
Yeah, I mean, very simply, I don't agree that it's coherent with the hypothesis
Oh my
that God
god.
does not exist. The material world existing is not evidence that all that exists in the material universe is that which we
Well,
can
no, but
observe.
they'll say it's a
He
simpler
didn't ask that.
hypothesis, right? They'll say that it's simpler to not posit an additional realm that we already have one to
Yeah,
explain.
you're adding more assumptions, John. Breaking Occam's razor.
Yeah,
I don't agree with that, by the way, but I'm just trying to steelman their
yeah.
argument and just say that I
I
think
mean, I
John doesn't
certainly would
clearly.
agree with Romans 1 that everything is manifest the existence of God. It's
Well, John,
self-evident.
can I
God
ask
is a self-evident
hold on, John.
proposition.
Yeah,
John, do you think that God's
what's
existence is a probability, or do you think it's more of a logical deduction? Like, are you confident in God's existence to a very high percentage
No, no,
point,
no.
or would you say
I reject probabilistic. No, I mean, what
okay?
kind of
So then
idiot
you would
says
okay.
God
So then you're
probably
not an
exists?
evidentialist, which
What
is
kind of
what you
idiot
said.
A
says
lot
God
of
probably
people.
exists,
A
Caleb?
lot of
What?
people.
Well, yeah. Thanks.
Rich,
That's my position, John. So I mean, you don't have to call
Oh,
me an idiot.
William Lane
I
I'm
called you
Craig.
sorry.
much worse.
What do you mean by
Richard
Most
idiot?
people.
Swinburne,
Most
William Lane
people, right?
Craig, like all
Yeah,
these people.
the vast majority of theistic philosophers would do. Richard Swinburne does that. I
Yep.
mean, Peter von Inwagen, Alexander, most of the people I can name off the top of my head would say that.
Do you
Other
say,
than
Caleb,
William Craig.
Jesus is probably God? Is that what you say?
Yeah. Yep.
Okay, well then that's you. Well, then again, I mean, uh,
I mean,
well,
I can't prove Jesus is God with absolute logical certainty. I think that that's again a probability issue. I think outside of solipsism
I
and a
mean,
few other
Caleb, I
versions
mean,
you can.
that doesn't surprise me. I mean, we've talked before, and I
Yeah.
don't want to go into your theology or anything, but that doesn't surprise me that you would say that.
I
It's
mean,
just,
thank you for saying I'm
I
consistent,
mean,
at least.
I mean, it's just funny because this guy, what, if you asked him that question again, right? He would just say neither. It's neither probability, nor can he logically deduce God's existence, right? Because if you asked him, like, how do you logically deduce that God exists? He'll just like say some like gibberish, right? Like you ask him, like, what's the contradiction? Like the same thing that we do to EF, right? What's the contradiction entailed by atheism? Right? And this is a guy that hand waves the question, right?
Yeah,
So then he'll drop the claim and just say that he just believes in God as a different type of necessity. He's
right.
changing it to metaphysical modality, right?
No,
But
you're correct.
even he doesn't understand the metaphysical modality is just a subset of logical modality, right?
No, I agree with you, Darth, that I don't think that there's a logical deduction in a sense that all these arguments, cosmological, ontological, teleological, I don't think they're I think they're I don't think it's sufficient to convince somebody. And so I believe what the Bible says, which is that
Who's talking
all of
about
us are given the
convincing?
revelation of God, the knowledge of God,
But it doesn't actually say that,
supernaturally.
John. Romans 1 is talking about idolaters specifically in the context that Paul's writing. He's talking about the
Yeah.
pagans in Greece and elsewhere in antiquity.
Who?
He's not saying every single person
Okay,
does.
I have a question, Caleb. This is an interesting. Do you agree that Romans 1 says that no atheists exist?
No.
Yeah, so you'd be the fourth one on Clubhouse.
Well, it's
I've taken
because
a poll.
elsewhere it says
It's about
elsewhere in Romans, if you want to take Romans in context, he
it's a
also says, "How will they know if they
yeah,
have not heard?" And how will they? So
and
you can't take that in isolation.
that doesn't surprise me either. I'd say it's about 92% of Christians. Doesn't depend on what denomination, monergist, synergist,
Nobody cares about your
Arminian,
commentary.
Calvinist,
That's
whatever.
irrelevant.
They all acknowledge that Romans 1 is saying atheists do not exist.
Well, that's not a I just because the majority of people you talk to, you have to read scholarship on it and what professional people who read the original languages and know the context of the passage say. And I'm telling you, you have to read the entire context of the book. You can't just take a particular passage. And if you read Romans 10, 11, and 12, where he talks about evangelizing, or if you take what Jesus says about those who have not heard will have less blows on the day of judgment, that is explicitly saying that some people are less responsible because they didn't have
Well,
the opportunity than others are.
well,
So I don't think at all it says that.
Caleb, depending on what scholars you're talking to, you're going to have them talk about, homosexuality in the Bible as being pederasty. You're going to have people talking about the,
On
everlasting
both sides, it depends.
nature.
It
Right.
depends on and it depends on their arguments. Just
Right.
because there are scholars on
And
both
some,
sides doesn't mean it's not a good. Doesn't
and
mean that we
so,
can't discuss it.
and some people don't even believe that hell is forever because you're going to,
Yes,
people,
and I'm in that, and you know that I'm in that
I
camp.
know. That's why I
Yeah,
mentioned it. You know why I mentioned that.
and that's fine, and we can discuss and debate that. But what you don't do is say, well, there's people on both sides, and you're going to get into a slippery slope. But you discuss the arguments, you weigh them, you see which one is more persuasive based on the evidence
Right.
and logical cohesion. That's how scholarship
Right.
works.
And all I'm saying is I personally believe clearly anyway that Romans 1 is saying that no atheists exist. I understand that other people
So,
have different
so
views.
how do you wait? How are you taking the other passages I just mentioned then, in context
Listen,
of
we've
that?
had extensive discussions, Psalms 10, 11, 12, 14. I mean,
Enough with
the
the
list goes
fucking
on and on.
commentary. Just answer the fucking question.
Someone's unhinged.
John, can you give me like in 20 seconds or less just how you interpret that? Just point blank
Yeah,
because I think
very, very
I
simply,
think they just
very
want you a direct
simply,
answer.
I understand it to be that that God has given us the revelation, a general revelation of a Creator to exist, and that we have no excuse, that we have suppressed the truth and unrighteousness, and that we know that God exists. Very
I'm
simply.
asking about the
Yeah, but
other
a little while
passage,
ago
though,
you
not
said
that.
that it wasn't like God isn't revelatory.
Special
I
revelation,
was asking about the
rascal.
other passages, John.
Two different
I'm
You,
asking.
revelations.
Yeah, let these two go because Caleb's doing a great job.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that. I was asking how you interpret Romans 9, 10, and I'm sorry, not, well, more Romans 10 through 12, because elsewhere it does say that how will they hear if they have not heard? You can look at the Petron epistles where it says it'll be worse for them who have believed and left than not. So you have degrees of punishment. This is not something where it's like everyone's equally responsible. And the fact that there are degrees for people who have not heard specifically
Yeah, but
implies that not
if you
everyone is
if
held to
you
that
be,
same level of accountability.
but Caleb, if you look at Romans 10, it's talking about what? Jesus being Lord. This is what's the context
Yes.
of, right? Romans 1 is not talking about Jesus. It's talking about general revelation.
So are you? Is your position that there are no atheists, or do you think everyone believes in the Christian God specifically,
No,
or do you
no,
acknowledge that some people
no, no.
sincerely
There
don't
are
believe in the Christian
clearly
God?
there are unbelievers, and unbelievers meaning what? Unbelievers that Jesus Christ is Lord and Savior, and so they are the unbelievers, and that's why that's a special revelation versus a general revelation that all people know that a Creator God exists.
So why
That's the
is hold on?
distinction. And
But
so
why
when you
is
talk
general?
about Romans
So
10, we're talking about special revelation at that point.
so do you think that general revelation is enough to condemn you, and special revelation is required to be saved?
Yes.
So why is it not? So if why is general revelation enough to condemn you if you don't? Can you be responsible for not knowing about Jesus specifically?
Yes, you're responsible for your sins.
But how do you know? Yeah, but if you see that there's a God. Let's say that in your overview, you accept that there's a God that exists, that everyone knows this, and you, to the best of your ability, make do what Romans 1 says. You have your God. You try to follow what you believe your God taught, and you have a certain conception of human morality. If you just granted that not everyone believes in the Christian God, can someone sincerely believe in another God and work their best according to what they think that God is teaching? And they could be wrong on that, but why is that enough to condemn them if we're just granting that they generally know there's a God? But generally knowing there's a God is not going to save you. So I don't see how that gives them
That's
personal
correct.
responsibility. But
Generally
how does
knowing
that give them
God is
personal
not going to save
responsibility?
you. Yeah,
But how does
generally
that
knowing a God. All of us have a general knowledge of God, but all of us are sinners and fall short of the glory of God, right? And so it is our sin that condemns us, right? And
but
it is the faith in Jesus Christ that saves us from our condemnation.
but not everyone knows about that, right?
Not everyone knows about that. And we could go to Romans 9 about that too.
Well, okay, I guess yeah, and I know where you're going with that, but I guess the point is it's not coherent to say that you were that general revelation is enough to condemn you, but special revelation is required to save
Yeah,
you on
here's
both
the
things.
thing, okay? It's not that belief, right? In a sense that lack of belief that condemns us, Caleb. This is the whole point, right? It is our sins that condemn us, right? Jesus in John chapter 3 says he did not come here to condemn those who would lack belief in his self, as Messiah and Lord, right? It's not that. He came here to save those who were already condemned. We are all already condemned, and it is faith in Jesus Christ that saves. It is not the lack of faith that condemns.
But yeah, John, but now
Does
you're
that make
appealing
any
to this.
sense?
I don't think it is. But John is appealing to this really strange Calvinistic compatibilist model where it sounds like I don't know, John, do you think that people are yes or no, are people responsible for their bad actions? Okay, are people responsible for their good actions, or is God responsible for their good actions?
Yes, they are. God is responsible.
Okay, so how can someone be responsible for how can someone be responsible wholly for their bad actions but not be responsible for their good actions? And
Because
how in the same way, how can God be responsible for their good actions but not for their bad actions?
because of their sinful nature, and that we are all born
But
with sinful nature. And so as someone, I mean, this is theology, of course, but as someone who's born with sinful nature,
did
we're
we
depraved
choose to be
totally.
born with a sinful nature, or could God have intervened into? Is that our decision that we were born with a sinful
Yeah,
nature?
God ordained that to be the case.
So if God
That's
ordained it,
denying this
how
again.
is He not responsible if He ordained it? I mean, at best you could say it's coaxalization where we're both responsible. At best you could say they're both responsible. But how are you saying God is not
Yeah,
responsible at
because
all?
they're secondary causes.
Jack, I'm going to talk to David and Miguel about Stalinism in about 20 minutes. Do you want me to add you to that group?
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, I don't know what you're trying to do. You're trying to poke holes in Calvinist or Reformed theology?
No, he's saying your construction of the system is incoherent.
I think Caleb will understand that. He may disagree. Clearly, he does, but I don't think he is saying that I don't have a proper understanding of Calvinism.
I'm not saying you don't have a proper. I'm granting that you understand Calvinism. I'm just saying I think the system itself is incoherent.
That's what I
Would
thought.
you
Yeah.
let me ask another question? I guess. Do you so D.A. Carson takes a similar view of that, and he says in one book, the God of the Bible is responsible for. He basically said what you said. The God of the Bible is responsible for our good actions and also morally culpable for all of our evil actions. If you ask me how this is possible, all I can tell you is that this is the Bible. This is the God the Bible describes. Would you agree with that of saying I basically you don't really know how to explain it? It just is because that's what the Bible says, and you just want to take a and that's fine if you want to take a fideistic approach to say that we don't really understand it, but
No, no, I
that's
don't take
God's
that approach.
revelation.
I think it's very understandable. I think it's very coherent. I certainly
Maybe
don't
not.
take the position just that the Bible says. Maybe along like the Trinity or something like that. I might take that sort of a Mysterian type of route because it is very complex. But as far as the theology, Reformed theology, I don't think it's very complex.
Well, it just well, it's not. I think that's the issue. I think it's because it's not complex is because it is so questionable as far as the conclusions it draws. I think that's the issue. This almost reminds me of how you have athletes, especially football players, who want to give God credit for all the good stuff. They won't say, "Oh yeah, that was all God when I messed up that pass or whatever." That was on him. But no, the only things that are on him are the really good things. So.
Yeah, I just
Uh,
think it's emotionally unsatisfying to many people, but I don't think there's any logical problems.
Yes, Salib, can I come in here for a short while?
I mean, you're already in now. Might as well.
No, we'll do that later,
Yeah.
Jack,
Can I
because
speak for maybe 10 seconds?
Just spit it out.
Yeah, thank you. Here's the deal. It's very simple. It's not that complex. My understanding is, and that's what everybody should. It's very simple to understand. Rather, I'm not imposing on anybody. See, here is the deal. I understand what you're asking the question, whether goodness is all God and the negativity is all human. I understand that. Here's the deal. See, there's a choice. That the freedom of choice is given to human being. There's a evil or a negative
Not
or
if
a
you're a
positive process.
Calvinist.
Let me finish. Let me finish.
I don't see how
Let me
freedom
finish.
of choice. Sorry.
Jack, let me finish, Jack.
I don't
Let me
see
finish.
how
Let me land. Just
freedom
10
of.
seconds, I'm
I
landing.
don't. No. It's
See,
all right. You've already
there's
made your point.
let
It doesn't.
me
I don't
finish,
see
my
how
dear friend.
freedom. Look, I don't. I don't. Somebody mute him. I don't see how freedom of choice makes any difference.
Let me finish, my dear friend.
Because the thing is, right, freedom of choice is consistent with all actions being good, right? So it's not as though freedom of choice explains why some agents choose evil, right?
That choice is given by God. Devil and good is there in
It's not. You're
everybody.
not addressing the
You have to
objection.
choose.
Yeah,
You're not
Which way
addressing
you
the
go.
objection. You're not
I don't
addressing the
believe in
objection.
libertarian free will, Kailash, just to let you know.
God is not a dictator. He has given a choice to everybody.
Let's
You
remove.
choose it.
Let's remove this guy.
I don't believe in libertarian free will, Kailash. You're not representing my
That's
God.
your freedom. That's your freedom.
Doesn't make any difference whether you're free or not, right?
Yeah, but
Freedom
God is
doesn't
not
explain
dictator
why
like you and
evil.
me. God is not a
Freedom
dictator like
doesn't.
you and me.
Freedom. Can somebody remove this guy
Wait,
from the
Kyle,
stage?
calm down or you're going to get removed, right? Oh, well, too late.
How does freedom explain evil, right? You can have evil. You can have freedom with no evil. So something has to explain why evil occurred, right? I mean, there's freedom in heaven and no evil, right? God has freedom and can't perform any evil actions. So obviously, freedom doesn't explain evil.
Wouldn't it just be the
Yeah,
choice of the free agent wanting to do evil?
I
Wait,
mean
but
the way
the
the
point
way
is,
I
how is
understand
it?
it,
How
yeah.
is it that God can't do any evil but has free will?
Because God is omniscient and knows all the consequences and the values of his actions, whereas human beings are not.
What
And so,
difference does that make?
because in hindsight, we may regret decisions that we make based on more knowledge that we
Yeah,
have.
but why not? Why not? Why couldn't God provide human beings with the knowledge to always
Because then we
choose
wouldn't be
correctly?
responsible.
But so
Because
God is
then,
not responsible?
no, because his knowledge exists necessarily.
Wait,
I have a different
I
idea
don't
than
Well,
this.
understand. How is that not a naturalistic fallacy?
I'm not entirely sure what you were referring to in that.
Well, responsibility is a normative notion, right?
No, I understand. No, yeah, no, of course it is. But
Yeah, so
I'm
how does
saying,
necessity generate how is it that necessity somehow frees you from responsibility?
well, I guess it's in the sense that God's character is necessary, not that he's responsible to himself
wait,
and
but
to the
you're
characters
not.
that exist.
Look, there's a weird. It's hard to understand exactly what you're saying, right? Like,
It is, yeah.
yeah, because the point is that if you want to say something like God doesn't have libertarian free will, or God's not responsible, and God is perfect, then there's a question about what good it is for there to be imperfect beings, right? Because it would diminish God's goodness for him to be responsible, is what it sounds like in your is what you're saying, right?
Well, I guess it depends on your view of autonomy. I don't think. Well, granted, God has autonomy in the sense that there's nothing external to him,
No,
but there
it's
may be
not.
more of a greater sense of indeterminism when we are being developed as agents, for example, than it would be with God.
Look, there's a question of why is it good if it's not the case that a perfect being exemplifies the property? That sounds like a contradiction, right? A perfect being has all great making properties. A perfect being doesn't have responsibility. Therefore, it follows that um, having responsibility is not a great making property. If it's not a great making property, there's nothing good by adding it to the world.
Well, could we switch out responsibility for autonomy?
I don't know what difference it makes. You were the one who said that God wasn't responsible, right?
Well, responsible may have been a poor use of wordage on my part, so maybe I can scale that back slightly. But if you're going to say humans are autonomous from God, including their wills and their desires, then God may not, by giving the more God inputs into humans, the less autonomous they are.
Wait,
I don't know if that's any more
why does
clear.
making what I don't understand? I don't even understand. This is not even like the natural notion, right? The natural notion of informed consent, for example, is being aware of all of the relevant facts. In fact, the more relevant facts you're aware of, the better informed you are to make a decision, the more autonomy you have. So that's just the natural notion. So now I don't even understand what you're talking about.
Yeah, and I don't understand the necessity thing anyway.
Yeah, I didn't have anything in particular to comment off the top of my
The
head.
point is, even if
If
you leave God out, right, in heaven, presumably, there's no evil.
right, although
Human
that's more in
beings
hindsight, though.
don't. What?
So that's in hindsight.
What do you mean that's in hindsight?
I don't know. I forget the name of the paper, but there was someone who argued for what's called proximate compatibilism, where we have libertarian freedom on Earth, but this develops a moral character, and then that moral character
Like,
creates a
see, I don't
compatibilistic view of
understand the
that.
development of moral character stuff, right? Because God's moral character is not developed. And
Mhm.
so if it was having the moral character that was important, God could make people with moral characters.
But God's moral character is not made by an external agent, right?
Yeah, but why does that matter?
Because God, I don't think God can. It would be incoherent for God to have it for God to create contingent beings who have necessarily existed or characters like His own. Because unlike Him, He is not a created being, and so by definition,
Yeah, but
His
what I'm
character is
asking is
autonomous.
why is creation a relevant feature?
because one is dependent on something else, whereas the second one
Yeah,
is
but why
unlimited.
is dependency a relevant feature?
Why is dependency a relevant feature for freedom?
Yeah.
Well, that would probably depend if whether or not you're if there's external causation, you're a compatibilist versus a libertarian. Because
I don't see why that makes any difference.
well, I mean, it's just like how it was with Calvinism, right? Where God is the one deciding creating our sin nature, then that would be more on him than it would be on us, wouldn't it? Unless you want to say that you think humans could still be responsible for their moral character, given that God created it for them.
Yeah, I think human beings could be responsible, but the point is, God wouldn't be off the hook.
Right. That's what I'm saying. Or maybe I didn't say that, and
But God, I don't see how God gets off the hook if there's libertarian freedom either. I mean, as long as he has foreknowledge.
Right.
I mean, even if he doesn't have foreknowledge, it's hard to see how he gets off the hook, right?
Sure, but doesn't libertarian? Well, I don't want to say doesn't entail, but I guess under that model, humans are autonomous from God in their actions. So the only responsibility God has is in creating the person, but that doesn't mean he creates their desires and who they are. That might be something they have to
Well,
shape themselves.
he permits them to perform evils. He doesn't have to do that.
He permits them to perform actions, and whether or not they are evil is the decision of the agent.
No, the point is he permits evil to occur. He doesn't have to do that.
Well, if they're truly under libertarian freedom, can he give them complete freedom and also guarantee? Of course, it's logically possible that they won't do evil. I don't think anyone denies that.
I mean,
But the
permitting
issue is
evil
when you're
just sounds like a contradiction anyway, right? It sounds like
co-action. Sorry, go ahead.
Well, it sounds contradictory because if something is morally permissible, then it's not the case that it ought not be done. If something is evil, then it is the case that it ought not be done. So if you say permissible evil, it sounds like you're just uttering a contradiction in terms. Evil is by definition impermissible. Otherwise, there's just no distinction between something being evil and something being morally permissible.
I'm listening to this discussion and I don't understand it. And I'm not a stupid person. First of all, you were talking about the title is liberal
What's the argument for
conservatives.
that?
Wait, hold on a sec.
Well,
Hold on a sec.
you're making many
Let's just be clear. Let's just be clear about what we're talking about, right?
Yes,
When
you're talking about conservatives.
wait. One thing at a time. I just want to go one thing at a time. We'll just go with the last thing that I said. I understand evil to be something that ought not be done, right? That's the notion of evil. It's a normative notion. As long as it's a substantive normative notion, what we're saying is evil is understood as that which ought not be done, right?
It's part of the human condition.
But I don't care if it's part of the human condition or whatever. None of that stuff is relevant. I'm just trying to get you on board with the concept. The concept is that evil is understood as that which ought not be done.
Okay, yes.
Okay. Right now, if you say,
but the response,
let me just follow up from that point.
Yep.
If it's the case that we say permissible evil, right? I take that to be a contradiction in terms, because the function of permissibility there is evacuating it of normative content. It's saying it's not the case that it ought not be done. So you have a direct contradiction. It's evil ought not be done, and it's not the case that it ought not be done. And so that's just a contradiction in terms.
I'm somewhat trying to understand. I don't understand. Okay, explain to me, please, where God comes into this. God does nobody knows God. Moses hid in the crook of the rock, and he said, "I want to know who you are." And God said, "You humans can't know who I am."
So you want to know how God comes into it? Before you get carried away, let's just talk about that. The way God comes into it, right, is that God is understood to be a good being, right? And a good being a perfectly good being does what ought to be done and doesn't do what ought not to be done, right? Only does what ought to be done. Now, if it's the case that God is perfectly good and evil ought not be done, then God, being good, ought not allow evil. That's just because allowing evil is just to say that by God's lights, something that ought not be done, it's not the case that it ought not be done. So I mean, I guess you could say that God is irrational. That's one way out. You could say that God is but then it's like, how is God perfectly good if he's irrational? So that's how God comes into it.
You could also just deny like classical theism.
Or you're gonna have to accept like competing desires, right?
Yeah.
Well, it doesn't.
Well, that doesn't seem
Yeah,
compatible with God's perfect rationality to have competing desires.
that also doesn't. It wouldn't matter if he had competing desires anyway, if he's perfectly good, right? Even if it is
Yeah, because if he
inconsistent with
was
his.
perfectly good, then whatever his desires are desires for the best thing. So even if they're in competition with each other, they have to be two different ways of bringing about the best states of affairs.
Right. So on this view where evil is a substantive normative notion, you can't have um, God coexisting with evil. Or if you say that there is evil, then it just follows that there is no God. That's how it comes in. That's how it comes into it. There's no perfectly good God, to say the least.
This will be the last thing I say because I do have to go in a few minutes. But can one simply ask why evil has to be defined in a normative way? Can one just deny that it has ontology and that it's the absence of good?
Well, if you look, I mean, I wouldn't understand a view like that. But if you wanted to say that it's not a normative notion, then you just end up saying that it's not. In the normative sense, you're just saying there is nothing that ought not be done, right? And so that just to me seems to be conceding the argument, because there's nothing that one ought not do. You can't impugn anybody for anything at that point.
Perhaps I'm just trying to think if it's. I feel like this is like a double negative where you just say there are things one ought to do and one falls short of doing that. But then I guess you could say, does the inverse of that also entail that it's normative? Of you ought to do this and you
Sorry, I got to
ought
go
to
into
do
another
opposite of
call.
this. Oh, you're good. Yeah, I have to head out anyway, but that was fun.
Yeah, thank you, Caleb, for being someone we can actually talk to.
I'm not entirely sure why is that an objection to say the bad or the evil is an ontological parasite on the good. As you can just reiterate the question and ask why it's not maximally good.